that maximised the possibility of getting some responses, one of which was from this reasonably popular channel called Papa Gut.
Hey, stoinks are up.
Here are 4 comments calling Papa Gut out for his entire response basically amounting to, this doesn't matter.
This guy's very intelligent. For you to say that that's my entire response is ridiculous.
Probably quite offensive to a lot of women if one of your key metrics for determining who's a woman is this.
If you're a straight guy, who would you rather this person or this person?
As offensive as that is,
that's not offensive at all, dude. You're this person unless you're gay.
And yeah, does it actually feel more accurate to point at someone who is clearly presenting in a very feminine way, who maybe looks pretty much indistinguishable from an actual woman, and say, oh, him over there? Probably not.
That's a W to me.
In order to genuinely identify something, that thing must have a clear definition.
Women watch Love Island, men do not.
I could accept trans identity as a temporary solution for those who currently have a very strong feeling of association with the opposite.
Another W for Papa Gut. It's really just 2 different opposing perspectives colliding in a reasonable way. This has been probably the most enjoyable piece of content I've made in a couple weeks. Alright guys, this is gonna be fun. I got called out. I guess called out. Is called out? I don't even know if that's I got a response from this person, King Critical. They made a video a while ago. I don't know why this is up on my screen. They made a video a while ago.
What is that for?
Called comprehensively debunking the trans ideology. This is their original video.
This video,
I remember reacting to it, and I remember saying it was like an interesting video. I disagree with a lot of it, but it was stimulating. I actually made sure I said that before I said it, that I said it. But I even remember saying that it was like stimulating. It was interesting. This person was intelligent. And that was about a month ago. Funny enough, on my last, we'll say, quote unquote, bad thumbnail, before I started putting actual effort into my thumbnails. It was just like the cross, you know, so it's an interesting time. This was about a month ago. And they did a response. I like that the thumbnail, they used that picture of me, my streamed picture, because a lot of people use one of the ugliest pictures of me ever, and it's it makes me look like a fucking pedophile. Let's see. Oh yeah, you Google it. It's one of the first ones, dude. It's one of the first ones, bro. Look at this. Terrible picture. So right off the bat, that's brownie points right there, man. I really appreciate that, brother. Really appreciate that. So I'm interested to see what they have to say, man. So let's take a look.
I'm back from North Carolina, where, if you've been following
I'm back from Pennsylvania, baby.
my community posts, you'll know that I lost my glasses. So I'm recording this video with my backup glasses, partially because I want to know what you guys think. Do you like these glasses? Drop a comment below and let me know. Also, while you're at it,
I guess I could feel that, man. I like my old glasses better, but these ones look nicer, I guess.
Like this video. Thing is, whether you say you like them or not, I will still have to buy something extra, because first of all, these are an out-of-date prescription, and second of all, the lenses on my old glasses,
bro, I look like a certified certified second hard driver in that other photo. It's so true, man. I look like an actual fucking creep.
Had something on them called an anti-glare coating. And although I'd noticed glares even when I had that coating,
I got the sunglasses on mine.
With these glasses that have no coating, the glare from certain angles can be borderline ridiculous, so I apologize if you notice any obvious errant glares throughout this video. So either I need to buy new lenses, or I need to buy a new lens.
Let me tell you, fucking like glasses companies are crazy. I got these were $1,000, but I got them only for $400 because of my insurance. But these are shit quality glasses. They suck. I don't even know what they are. They're Evitech. They suck. If you could see this, I could pull the thing apart. It's just terrible. I got ones from fucking Costco I used to use, and they were amazing. And they were $200 uninsured, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe $300. They were great. I don't know. It's just like dumb as fuck in my opinion.
Lenses and a new frame.
I think they have like a website where you can get it for cheaper.
A massive additional cost. So be honest, if you like these frames genuinely, then tell me. But if you think there is a different style of glasses that would actually complement my face way better, then this is your one chance to have some input, so don't squander it. Anyway, speaking of very important things, let's talk about my gratifyingly popular video where I debunk trans identity.
Oh, there's a second one? Oh, well, we watched the first one, it's fine.
I mentioned before that I put off making this video for a long time because I was worried it wouldn't do very well, and if I just released it and hardly anyone watched it, that would have been a massive waste of what I thought was one of my best argued videos. But just this one time, the algorithm came through for me, and you guys helped massively with that, and that video is now my second most popular video of all time, and I always like it when a video that I really want to do well, does well. And of course,
yeah, especially if you put a lot of effort and passion into it. I feel you, brother.
That maximised the possibility of getting some responses, even though I didn't actually get that many. In fact, I only got 2, both live stream responses, one of which was from this reasonably popular channel called Papa Gut.
Hey, reasonably popular, dude. We're fucking stoinks are up. Stocks are up, baby. Love it. Thank you so much for the compliment.
Which sounds like it could be really entertaining, right? I mean, watching a trans
Bro, you better not fucking tell me that it's not entertaining. I will literally cry.
activist fall apart upon exposure to facts and logic.
Ooh, owned.
As their entire worldview crumbles around them. The problem is,
I feel like it's not that deep for me, man. Shit.
neither of the people who made responses to me actually cared about the trans issue that much.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I respect trans people and gay people, and I have, like, you know, trans friends. One, frankly. Wow. I'm trying to think. Yeah, I gotta see him again. That'll be fun. I met him with my wife's gay best friend. It was a lot of fun. They were pretty chill. Well, actually, I get two. Okay, guys, I can't be transphobic, but, like, you know, it's not something. And I think that this is like, I wouldn't even call myself an ally because I'm a fucking cringe. But that's like kind of the point, I feel like, from somebody who's not trans. Like, I'm not a trans person, and I think trans people are valid. I do care, but, like, I'm not going to get super emotionally loaded over it because, like, that would be inappropriate, right? Like, if you're, like, my thought is, like, listen, first of all, I'm more of, like, I mean, I have, like, liberal ideology, but I'm more, like, conservative attitude. That's number one. But number two, like, if I'm just a dude who thinks trans people are valid, if I get super worked up and emotional, that's fucking cringe, and that's, like, kind of shitty, right? Like, I don't have any personal anchor into this. I'm not trans. I'm not gonna get worked up. If you're a trans person, you're arguing this stuff. I get it. It's part of your identity. It's not for me. And I feel like when you're trying to have a conversation or whatever, which, by the way, so far, this guy, I kind of like this guy. I would be down to chat with him. Like, it would be really dumb of me to get, like, emotionally worked up, because, like, how is that going to change anybody's mind? You know, if you're a trans person, you understand why you're trans, and you're valid in whatever capacity you're valid in, you know. So you know, whatever. So it's like maybe harder for you to communicate with a normal person. I don't mean you're not a normal person, but the average person who maybe doesn't understand trans people, maybe it's, like, harder for you to understand that. For me, like, that's kind of like, wouldn't that be my job? Like, hey, I'm supposed to be able to communicate to, like, other people who don't really necessarily understand trans people, right? So, like, I'm supposed to talk to them in a different way, because if you understood why trans people were valid from a trans person, you wouldn't need to filter through somebody else that maybe you identify more with, right? That makes sense to me.
On the contrary, one of the recurring criticisms of Papa Gut's video is that a lot of what he was saying was just, who cares?
I do say that a lot. It's a problem that I do have. Who cares? I don't care. In my defense, I do explain myself. Usually either before or after I say it, but I do say, like, who cares? I don't care. Because sometimes I don't necessarily care about the super specific parts, I guess, of it. Or, like, I don't care about this, but, like, I'm going to explain why. It's probably not good optically, probably not good form for me to say I don't care. Probably kind of rough.
This doesn't matter. Why are you talking about this? So in some sense, this is a
Do I say why you talk about this? Okay.
win for me.
I'll take his word for it.
Right? The only people who were brave enough to actually make responses to my video are those who don't have very much invested in this debate in the first place.
True. Based? Yeah, again, I think maybe for, like, some trans people could be triggering. And then also, let's be real, there are a lot of people who are, I don't even want to say this, like, negatively. There's a lot of people who may not necessarily be regular, like, actual trans. There's a lot of, like, valid, real trans people going through, like, identity shit. But we also have, like, a lot of people, and especially, like, young AFAB people will say, signed female at birth, to be respectful, that I think that there's a tremendous amount of sexualization in society hit against them in some capacity, and it makes them not want to identify with being a woman. In some ways valid, in some ways maybe not necessarily valid. You know, like, I go to the extreme of, like, I see a lot of OnlyFans girls, people. They'll do OnlyFans. They'll make money sexualizing themselves. Then my theory is they associate that femininity with the sexualization, and it makes them not want to identify as a woman anymore. And to make it less extreme, you could see just, like, maybe the average young AFAB person on the internet seeing themselves get sexualized constantly within comments or different things, that the way people talk about it. And again, that might make them uncomfortable with associating with their feminine side or associating as a woman. And then the way that we educate is also a problem. In general, a lot of times it's, like, fear education. Like, you can bring it to, like, a dad. Like, dad will be like, they'll try to educate their daughters against creepy men by being like, be afraid of that. And I think that like, be afraid of that because they might fucking molest you as a girl. And, like, a lot of fear. I'm not saying that there isn't a level of truth to there potentially, but it's like we don't meet the argument. I always compare it to, like, sexual health education training or sexual health education in schools back in the day, where it wasn't like, hey guys, you should be responsible when you have sex. It's like, if you have sex one time, you're gonna get fucking pregnant and you're gonna get STDs and your fucking pussy and your dick are gonna rot off and you're gonna. So Yeah. But that's probably why.
Suggesting that people who would actually have something to lose if trans identity was shown to be complete nonsense are completely unwilling to actually engage with my video, almost as if they know deep down that my video would prove their beliefs to be complete nonsense.
Maybe, or maybe they just don't feel they want to be bothered to watch it. Or maybe it just didn't hit that algorithm that way, you know what I mean? It was a little bit more of a debate bro video. It wasn't bad. I'm not saying that it was bad. I actually liked this video. Again, it was very stimulating. But again, it was a little more debate bro-y. Maybe there's not a whole lot of trans people that are in like that debate bro-y thing. They're more focused on, I guess, Asmongold or something. I don't know.
But it does kind of make the stakes lower for me responding right now, especially compounded by the fact that these were live reactions, so the standards are kind of lower in that this isn't a scripted response that these people made. And unfortunately, all of this means I don't actually have
off the cuff, baby.
That much to sink my teeth into here. This isn't going to be as comprehensive as my original video. Papa Gut just has a few key points that are the bedrock of his position, and that's all I'm going to be engaging with here. But since he's not some hardcore trans activist, a lot of what he was saying didn't really intersect with what I was saying, as you'll see. And on that note, he didn't
Yeah, I think I leaned a lot into like spiritual aspects of it. Like a lot of it was like, listen, I love God and the concept of God, and I really do genuinely feel like there's something there. You know, it's hard not to. This is going to be something fucking super gay and cringe. It's hard not to believe that there's some kind of spiritual force out there that made me meet my wife. Like that's my personal journey, whatever, cringe. Meeting my wife was the most amazing thing that's ever happened to me in my entire life. And it's made me believe that there's some kind of God. And so, like, it's hard not to believe that there's, like, spiritual shit out there. If we can have conversations how there's, like, an almighty God out there, or maybe God's out there, or something spiritual out there, we can believe in angels and different, you know, these different things. Who's to say we can't believe that somebody might have been born in the wrong body? Right? How long was I muted? Sorry, my mic bugged out. Let's continue.
Seem to understand.
Anyway, what was I saying? If we could believe that there's a God out there, I think we could also believe that you could be born in the wrong body, especially since I think that the concept of you being born in the wrong body is it takes a little bit less mental gymnastics to believe than that there is a God and angels and all these other very complicated things, belief structures. So
understand my position either, indicating at several points that he thought I might have been a conservative.
Like I did think that people who adhere to like old school stereotypes about what a man and but what the fuck? Is this my quality of my video? A woman should be are the type of people who will say you are less of a man if you don't adhere to this and more of a woman or less of a woman if you don't adhere to this. And
obviously the nature.
I don't know if I applied that to him in that moment necessarily. I think I was speaking a little bit more broadly. So, dude, was I muted again? You're about to get fucking banned, dude.
If this being a live reaction means it will be harder for me to pick out neat snippets of him saying certain things that make it absolutely clear what he's saying, so I might have to provide some context.
That's fair.
Here, he's saying this as if it's some sort of response to me, which of course it isn't, because I don't support the enforcement of traditional gender roles on any.
I don't think I was saying that, but it makes sense that he would think that because I'm saying it in like a response to him. But in a lot of these instances, I'm talking like very broadly, especially since there are people in my chat pushing back against me, some of them, and be like, oh, I don't agree with this or that or the other thing. So it's like sometimes I'm just like, we're having sometimes just like a vague conversation, or not vague, but like a general conversation.
Anyone. The fact that he's confused here means that for the majority of the time he spent responding, he didn't actually understand the position from which I was coming.
Oh shit, he's coming. This video like accidentally becomes woke.
Also, coincidentally, he says this, which happens.
I hate listening to myself. It's so fucking cringe.
Happens to be the topic of my most recent video on this channel,
where like there could be a very low level of gender dysphoria technically if like you wish you had bigger tits. I suppose. Hey, bigger tits. Or as like a guy, if you have low testosterone wanting higher testosterone, maybe you have a level of some kind of gender dysphoria because you want more testosterone, you want more gender affirming care. You just want to affirm the your born sex rather than your I guess the opposite one.
Sure. For people who aren't denying reality, they don't need testosterone to affirm their born sex.
I wouldn't call it denying reality. I think that you just... Okay, I'm just gonna keep going.
The fact it's the sex they're born with, which is the only sex anyone has...
Yeah, well, nobody's debating that. It's the same sex, different gender, right? Like, that's a conversation.
Means that no intervention is necessary to affirm it. So
well, the intervention would be like testosterone. That was the point. So there is intervention. It's just not as... I understand that his general point is like, hey, they're born a man. They still identify as men. They just need some more testosterone. I'm not super strong on the point where like, hey, I think somebody had mentioned, like, it's brought something up. I don't ever go on the, like, everybody needs gender affirming care. Sure, like if you need testosterone and shit, whatever. I mean, you can even probably argue that like maybe even birth control is gender affirming care. I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not super strong on that. It was just something to bring up in general. I don't remember the context of exactly why I said it, but like, yeah, sure. I don't use that as like my defining argument though.
Getting into the substance of the video, like I say, a lot of it is just him complaining that what I'm talking about doesn't matter. Now, here are 4 comments that just happen to have been grouped together.
It doesn't matter. Great debunking, very useful.
by the YouTube algorithm.
Listen, bro, my video's like an hour and a half. I said more than it doesn't matter. Oh, it's an hour and 34 minutes and 15 seconds. I said more than it doesn't matter. I do say that, so I understand. But, like, let's be reasonable. A lot of the people who are saying that in the comments are gripping onto that because, like, that makes them feel more comfortable than engaging with what I'm saying. I'm not saying I don't say it, but I say more than it doesn't matter, just to be clear.
When I sorted by top comments. And as you can see, 3 of them are calling Papagut out for his entire response basically amounting to, this doesn't matter.
But that's not true. You know that that's not true. I think that this guy's very intelligent. For you to say that that's my entire response is, like, ridiculous. Those are some of my top comments. Well, I don't know if they're my top comments. They're just how they're sorted. Oh, it says top comments, but yeah, oh, look at that. It's just out of order. You'd think that the top comments would be likes and whatever. So, but yeah, a lot of the reason why it's like that too is because I plug my stuff on other social media accounts, and like my Twitter and my Instagram are like more right leaning, and so like I'll put something on there. They might be interested in watching the full video. Then they come in there and they're gonna be like, this is ridiculous. I don't think I have as much of an echo chamber with my content, generally speaking, because I did plug these on social media. And I have like because I make a lot of edgy jokes, especially I used to make even more edgy jokes on Twitter. On Instagram before I shifted to like, hey, let's just plug YouTube stuff because that's the content strategy. I think it's much more intelligent. So that's why I have as much pushback as I do in the video.
Now, I'm not going to show every single time that he just says, this doesn't matter, and why do you care, and why is this relevant? But there's one point where he tries to make this argument, and it's very funny to me.
And then like a society, dude, I hope it's not society where we accept like religion, which takes a lot of faith and takes a lot of faith and a lot of alternative reality belief to engage in. I think that if we can accept those types of realities or those types of ideologies, we can accept like a trans person feeling like they were born in the wrong body. I think that's totally fucking fair.
So there is so much that I could say in response to this statement. And
yeah, I want to hear it. I feel like that's like that's one of my biggest arguments when it comes to trans people. Honestly, like that's my biggest argument. Is like if we can accept religion, which takes a lot to accept, then we can accept somebody that feels like they're born in the wrong body.
First thing I want to point out is that this is literally the analogy that gender criticals make. Helen Joyce has literally said that pretty much her singular solution to the trans identity debate problem is that it should be treated like a religion. People can believe it.
I'm not necessarily saying it's treated like a religion. I'm talking more in the case of like, if alcohol is legal, why isn't weed legal, right? Like alcohol is much more intense than weed. Why do we have weed illegal? So if we can believe in religion, which takes a lot more to hook onto than like somebody being trans, then like, you know what I mean? Like that's the argument. I don't think it's a crazy argument to make. Like I know it's very normalized in our society to believe in religion because we were born and educated. We weren't born religious, but we were educated basically from birth. I mean, you get fucking baptized depending on your religion, but I got fucking circumcised. And then somebody ate it and it gave them eternal youth. Oh, I'm just kidding. What the fuck was I saying? Holy shit, dude. Anyway, right. So it seems more normal. Religion seems more normal. But I think that it's kind of crazier. It's not really crazy, but it's crazier if you look at it more objectively than somebody believing they were born in the wrong body. The fuck?
If that's what they want,
what the hell's happening?
To do, but they shouldn't force other people to participate. Maybe we can make some accommodations for these people's belief system, but only if it doesn't infringe on other people's rights, and it doesn't.
I agree with that, but what, like, I would say, like, which way does it infringe? Sports wise, I'm like, sure, I agree. Like, trans women probably shouldn't compete in sports, especially if they've gone through a male puberty. I agree with that. Like, what other way are we really referring to though? Because like I generally agree with that point. Like, it shouldn't infringe on somebody else's right. I don't think that trans women should compete in sports with cis women that have gone through a male puberty specifically, because they seem to have a pretty big advantage potentially. At least everything I've seen indicates that much. You want to talk about locker rooms, maybe, depending on how passable you are, because I could see why that would make you uncomfortable as a cisgender woman. I don't really care about regular bathrooms. I don't think that there's any actual threat that's going on. We've seen like really nothing outside of like one case where something is happening. So I don't care about regular bathrooms. Frankly, bathrooms in general could probably be gender neutral regardless, and it really would not fucking matter. In fact, there are some like that. I went to a restaurant a while back and they had gender neutral bathrooms. You walk into the bathroom and there's like a common washing your hands area, and then every stall is like locked and there's no urinal. Cool. That sounds good. Do you know what I mean? So yeah.
require other people to accept these religious views as true. If we did accept trans identity as being like a religion, which is what Papa Gut seems to be suggesting here.
I'm not suggesting that at all. Well, no, not in the way that he's saying. I'm not suggesting it's like a religion. I am, but I'm not. When I hear him say that, I hear him saying that like I'm saying that being trans is a religion. I don't think that at all. What I'm saying is that there's something fundamentally spiritual about it. So like depending on what, but it sounds like he means, and maybe I'm just like inaccurately representing his point. It sounds like what he thinks I'm saying is that like it's a religion. It's not a religion.
Here, then we would have to get rid of the Gender Recognition Act to be consistent, because we don't have a Reincarnation Recognition Act. We don't have a Trinity.
What does reincarnation have to do with? I don't understand.
The Recognition Act. We don't have a Shahada Recognition Act. And for
I truly don't understand this point.
Identity as being like a religion, which is what Papa Gut seems to be suggesting here, then we would have to get rid of the Gender Recognition Act to be consistent.
Okay. Oh, so it's just the act that allows trans people to be to change their gender. I don't care. No, I'm just I don't see why at all. I understand what he's saying. Separation of church and state. If I'm saying, which I'm not saying, that being trans is like a religion, so this point doesn't even matter. But if I'm saying that being trans is a religion, then we need to do separation of church and state and not have something about it. The problem here is that you would say the Gender Recognition Act is fundamentally recognizing somebody's, and I'm pretty sure I say something to this effect in the video, my original video, but it doesn't matter. I don't care. No, recognizing somebody's gender is fundamentally recognizing somebody's gender expression or their expression of their transness. There is nothing that restricts religious people from expressing themselves as religious. Nobody has ever had any law that stops them from wearing a cross or wearing a particular attire or whatever they feel like they need to do. Since the concept of trans people and it's becoming more accepted, this act makes sense to put them on par with everybody else of like, hey, fundamentally you guys have to recognize somebody's expression of themselves, but the religious people don't have anything instituted or constituted that prevents them from expressing themselves by putting on attire that is religious expression, right? So
because we don't have a Reincarnation Recognition Act. We don't have a Trinity Recognition Act.
Well, I don't know what that means, though. What is a Trinity? Like, what does that reincarnation have to do with anything? Like, what would that look like to you?
We don't have a Shahada Recognition Act.
What would these things look like to you? Because you can wear religious symbols and express yourself religiously. So what would these things look like to you? And
for this reason, most trans activists would actually get offended if you compared their belief to a religion, not least of all because most of them are atheists. And also, they know that even acknowledging trans ideology...
Are they? Okay.
Ideology as a belief system would already be conceding too much ground, because then they would actually have to have arguments for it. Instead, they like to insist that trans ideology, or rather trans identity, is just a fundamental facet of reality and as such requires no arguments. It's just a fact.
Okay, I don't think that, and I don't think it's a religion, so it doesn't really matter.
That people are born trans men or trans women.
Some people might be. I think it's more complicated than that. I think there's a mixture of like environmental and biological factors. I think it's much more complicated than that. One of those factors could potentially be like even hormone washing in the womb, but I don't think that it's just like you're born. I think there's probably some environmental aspects to it. It's a little more complicated than that. I mean, so maybe some people are born trans, but...
And you can't deny it. And I guess this leads us on to the whole why does this matter question. Well, Papa Gut kind of answers his own question here. If trans identity is like a religion...
I'm not saying that in the way that you're saying it, so it doesn't matter. This literally does not matter. This isn't even arguing against my point.
Then the fact that government policy is being rewritten to accommodate this religion is obviously going to matter to people who think that religion is wrong.
Okay. That's actually a really good point. So thank you, Nation, for the donation. So we literally have in our Constitution like freedom of like expression and religion, no? Right? So wouldn't that... So yeah, the First Amendment literally gives you freedom of like religion. It gives you the freedom to express your religious beliefs however you want. So your argument here doesn't even make sense, right? Basically, you're talking about like an act that the Gender or whatever Recognition Act. That would you could just be like, oh, what if they amended that into the Constitution, into the First Amendment? They would have been the same. Like they do have things implemented that protect all those things that you're saying. Everything that you're saying, they literally have the First Amendment is the freedom of religion, religious expression. So it's the same thing. right? Like your freedom of religion and religious expression. This, Trans Recognition Act, all it would do was tack on to that basically by saying you have the ability to express your religion, you express your trans identity as well. It's just an afterthought because this wasn't exactly a prevalent narrative back then, and that's a conversation that we could have about like all that. But so I don't even believe this argument he's making, but like that debunks his argument. So, okay.
The fact that there is a social expectation that I affirm trans pronouns and I'm a bigot if I don't matters if I don't want to affirm that which would require me to believe something I've not been convinced of.
Okay.
For Jews, it's very important that a baby is so...
I think he means there is nothing that is forcing us to take part in any other kind of religion. Okay, if he does mean that, that's interesting. Okay, so what you're saying that he might be saying, which I don't think that's what he's saying right now, but he probably does believe that, is... the First Amendment, well, he's not saying about the First Amendment, but generally, like, we have to allow people to have their freedom of speech and religion. But they're taking it a step further with trans people by forcing you to utilize particular pronouns. Okay. I have no answer to that right now. I don't think I've ever been, I've never critically thought about that. So I'm just not going to answer that, but I'm going to keep that in mind. I want to actually sit on that for a little while. The idea that when it comes to religion, you're told to, you appreciate, like, acknowledge its existence, let people practice, not harm them based on that, but you don't have to validate that. But I guess but there's no like difference in pronoun or anything. You're just supposed to make. I mean, maybe I don't know. I think I have to think about that. Because I know at some workplaces, they obviously force you. Well, they'll tell you like you have to use somebody's preferred pronoun. So that would be like, oh, I have an issue with that, but nobody tells me that I have to do that with other people of different religions. But they kind of do because you have to respect their existence and their expression. Fundamentally, I'm just like kind of thinking out loud right now. So sorry if this is going to be like loose. Fundamentally, you're just like told you have to respect somebody's identity based on religion or gender. I don't think it's like this. I don't think it's crazy. You can still think that it's stupid, I guess. I don't think, right? Actually, that's a good point too. Like, we're forced to close on Christmas, although we all get benefits from that. But I guess that's an example of like forcing somebody to kind of acknowledge religion. I guess I just okay.
Circumcised on the 8th day.
Whoa!
But I believe that you shouldn't be doing anything to an infant's genitals when they can't consent to that unless it is medically necessary.
Based, honestly.
And likewise, there are some
I've been talking to my wife about not wanting to circumcise our baby, and she says she wants to. I don't know.
Activists who, based on their pseudo-religious beliefs, think that it would be appropriate to do something to a child's genitals before they are emotionally mature enough to know what they're doing.
So just to be clear, like, you have to know that you're lying, right? Like, you have to know. Unless you're being so vague on purpose, because you can't get, like, bottom surgery until, like, you're 18 plus. I don't think there's a single instance of you being able to get bottom surgery before 18. You have to be at least 18 years old to get bottom surgery. So this is an outright lie, unless he's saying that taking hormones would have an impact on somebody's genitals in some capacity. But I feel like that's either he's incorrect, or he's being dishonest, or he's using like manipulative language to because nobody would ever reasonably think that taking hormones, like taking puberty blockers, which, by the way, again, great conversation to have, would be considered a change to somebody's genitals. What people are hearing is that like you can get bottom surgery and you can like fucking put your penis inside your body or whatever they do. I don't. So like that's not something that's happening. I don't know if it's dishonest or just incorrect, but
if we're being consistent here, we would say that both these things should be illegal because your religious beliefs don't override basic morality when it comes to the importance of...
Well, true, but they are legal, right? So then you'd want to maintain the standard. So like, right? I mean, nobody's getting bottom surgery under 18, so it doesn't really matter. But
emotional maturity as it relates to consent. And also, even if this didn't matter socially, there's still some value in...
let's see, top surgery removing a woman's ability to ever breastfeed. That might be true. But like, we're not talking about... We talk about genitals. Are your boobs genitals? Are boobs... I don't think boobs are genitals. No, they're not genitals. So what you're saying is incorrect. But again, top surgery you shouldn't be able to get till you're 18 either. The problem is that our age of consent is like 16 in some states, and I think that we need to like fundamentally raise age of consent in general. But
talking about whether things are true or false. I mean, people talk about mathematical truth absent anyone denying those truths.
Sure.
So clearly, divulging knowledge doesn't have to be in response to opposition. But even when there is an opposing side to evolution or heliocentrism or anthropogenic climate change, someone doesn't have to think it matters in order to make a point of stressing that those who disagree with this position are wrong. If trans identity is like a religion, well, I
don't think it is.
Everyone who makes a point of explaining why they don't believe a particular religion is an anti-theist. There are atheists who talk about being atheists without necessarily thinking that religion is harmful. Sure, if you dedicate a whole channel to talking about a debate, that suggests some strong degree of investment, but honestly, maybe you just think the other side is entertainingly stupid. But I don't even have to labor this point because Papaga literally says this.
But like, that's not a diss on religion. That's like, if me saying that, if that shakes your shit, that's your fucking problem. It's your faith. And if your faith gets struck by me pointing out that there's no facts to back it up, that's on you.
So in the video where he says that trans identity is like a religion, he then says that
I think that this framing is not correct.
Religious people shouldn't get mad about him pointing out that facts don't back up their religious beliefs. All right, I guess I can just...
Sure. I don't know how to really engage with this point too much anymore. I've engaged with it quite a bit because like I don't believe it's like a religion in the way that he's suggesting I think it's like. That's the problem. I don't know if he's doing it on purpose or on accident, but I am not doing a one-to-one being trans as a religion. I'm just pointing out, like, I guess more of a fundamental spiritual aspect of it.
Do my victory lap then. I mean, what else do I even need to say to add to that? Yes, I agree, Papaga. I agree with exactly what you just said. Trans ideology is like a religion, so if someone doesn't like me pointing out that it's incorrect, that's on them. But of course, I guess the question there is,
Well, then my question would be, okay, that's totally fine. My one question, and I hope he answers this, is do you believe that religion is real? Because if you're going to come with the argument and say like, oh, I don't think that there's any facts that support being trans, that's fair. There is really no literal fact that supports that trans exists. It is to a degree, we'll call it an emotional fact, in the same way that being religious is an emotional fact. Let's just say it like that. Would you apply that same logic to religion? Would you apply, and then if your answer is no, and then I want to understand why, that would be my question. I'm just wondering if he applies the same standard, and it's fine if you. I think I said multiple times that it's fine if you don't believe it's valid. I mean, obviously I'm going to disagree, but I'm not like going to fucking cum my pants about it. But I would wonder if you would hold that to both religion or being trans, and like, what's the difference to you then? So there actually is. They study their brains. Oh fuck, dude. Well, maybe you're right, but I don't know too much about that. So.
The facts disagree with trans identity.
The fundamental concept of sex and gender is that sex is the sex of the body and gender is the sex of the mind. Yeah, we're having a spiritual conversation here, guys. To some degree. That's pretty much all it is. It's philosophical. We're people that are able to engage in complex thought. We can have complex belief systems. And one of those belief systems is that some people might have been born a man or a woman or in the wrong body or something to that effect. You know?
Yeah, it's a philosophical disagreement where some people think that it's possible for a man to be a woman. So you'd agree.
Sure, I guess so.
Then, if it doesn't really make sense to say a biological male can be a woman, then it makes...
Well, I do think it makes sense. What do you mean?
It's complete sense that I would explain to people why the facts don't back up this religious belief. Good. Okay. That's why it matters.
What about other religious beliefs, though? Do you have like a I mean, I wouldn't doubt that he's an atheist. I just wonder.
One of the limitations of my video comprehensively debunking trans identity is that it was supposed to be comprehensively debunking trans identity, meaning it was supposed to be taking every possible pro-trans argument and every worldview that could justify affirming.
Well, I don't think it took that worldview. I don't think it took that philosophical or my argument.
Trans identity and explaining why they're all wrong. The problem is sometimes it was addressing pro-trans positions that would contradict other pro-trans positions, meaning that very few people, save for a level of cognitive dissonance that is not unheard of in trans ideology, would be thinking that every single argument applies to them. As such, a lot of Papagut's live response is just him saying that he doesn't think most of the points I'm making are relevant because they're not relevant to his specific justification for
no, that might be fair.
Trans identity.
Okay, what sure
does it mean for a definition to be correct?
I really don't see how this is necessarily relevant so far to trans people, because so far his own language debunks him. Because again, his whole thing right now is, I mean, he started with the way people look. Guys, you got to give me a break here, though. I am playing Star Wars on the hardest difficulty. But again, if you have trans people that are expressing a certain way and they look like women, what's your argument then, right? I don't really know the specifics of what we're talking about, because they're very small tidbits of my conversation, which obviously of my video, which obviously like it'd be ridiculous for him to show like all of it, because my video is an hour and 40 minutes or an hour and a half long. So, but I don't remember all this, like all the aspects of what we're talking about. Like fundamentally, that part is probably true. A lot of these probably didn't apply to my worldview on trans people. So I'm like, oh, well, this doesn't matter. So sure.
So here, for example, he doesn't think it's relevant for me to explain why there are certain correct ways of understanding the meaning of words. And he thinks that I'm debunking myself here because from his perspective, what I'm saying is it's important that we understand words as having meanings. They describe what people look like. The thing is, though, if you know your KC law, then you'll know...
Oh, I think he made a comparison of like Danny DeVito saying that he's a... Oh, okay, I remember now what he was saying there. Pretty sure what he was saying was something along the lines of like, there's two people, one is Danny DeVito, one's an actual black guy that runs fast, right? So every black guy, no. So I think it was like Usain Bolt or something, but like a fast black guy. I'm pretty sure that's what he had said. Or maybe I'm racist, who the fuck knows? And he was like, Danny DeVito might say that he's a fast black guy that can run really fast, but he literally isn't. But then I was like, well, what if people actually express themselves? What if Danny DeVito in this instance fucking, you know, actually turned black or something, right? And ran really fast. If we do like a comparison onto like trans people, you know, if you're just like, well, that's a guy, but if they're expressing themselves as a woman and you virtually can't tell the difference. And I think I even brought up Blair White, and then I forget who the trans guy is. I'm like, they're expressing themselves as their chosen gender, and so like this logic here doesn't really make any sense to me, because we're not just talking about somebody who says they're a thing, we're talking about somebody that lives as that thing. Yeah, the conversation was like, okay, in this instance, because again, he was comparing it to somebody who's just saying they're a thing. Buck Angel is biologically a woman. They were born a woman, but they express themselves as a man, and they look like a man. They do everything they can to be a man effectively. And so like, it's not the same. That's from what I remember that conversation was about, or that point was about. That's what all the context there was you had made this comparison to Danny DeVito and a black guy, and then you were like, oh, if you just say you're a thing, like that doesn't make you the thing. But it's like, okay, but what if you actually go through the effort of being the thing? You know, what if I fucking took melanin pills, made myself black, and what if I didn't have a dad, which I don't, and what if I loved anime, which is like very, for some reason, high characteristic of black people, and what if I was afraid of dogs, and what if I had a Hellcat? Maybe I am black. No, I'm just that obviously gets into again, this would be an interesting conversation to have with this guy, the difference between transgender and then transracial, because transracial is a thing, it's just not expressed the same way. So I would like to have that. I'm down to have the conversation, just like an interesting conversation. I'm not doing some fucking cringe debate bro shit. But this guy seems like he's a smart guy, maybe slightly autistic, not insultingly, that could have an honest conversation. Maybe. I don't think that some of the misrepresentations that he's made is because he fucking wants to misrepresent me intentionally. Maybe he's just like a little debate bro brained. Can I swim? I cannot. No, I actually can. I'm actually very buoyant. You'd be surprised how buoyant I am as a fat person. So
the very first debate I had around the trans issue was with Vorsh. And Vorsh's central argument was, there is no truth to language. It's something we just made.
Well, there's truth to language, but there is social constructs, so language can change.
Up, and therefore we should just define words in whatever way makes people the most happy.
I mean, I don't know if I agree with that necessarily. I would want to see how that manifests. But
we'll see what Papa Gut's defense for trans identity is in a moment, but suffice it to say, his defense is very different from that. Which is why he was a bit confused when I started off the video by trying to make it very clear that words mean things, and it matters that words have strict definitions.
I don't think they need to have strict definitions, or rather, they do need to have strict definitions, but those definitions can change as society changes. So
the point I was making is that if we can all agree that it makes sense to resist calling a pencil a sandwich because a pencil clearly is not a sandwich, then true. Likewise, it makes sense in principle to resist a biological male being called a woman.
Well, I think that maybe men and women are a little closer than pencils and sandwiches. Just to be clear, I think those are a little different, okay? I've eaten pencils before. They don't taste as good as sandwiches, okay? So it's a little bit different. They're a little bit different there.
Even if a biological male says that it would hurt his feelings to not be considered a woman, well, his feelings...
I think it's a little deeper than it would just hurt my feelings. I mean, I think there's an intense amount of distress associated with it, especially somebody who's actually trying to transition, right? Like if you're somebody that's like, let's say you're AFAB, where you're born a woman, and you're like, no, call me a man, but you're doing nothing to make that change. I don't think that you internally actually feel that way. Right? Like, I can respect you if you genuinely feel that way to a degree that would be distressing if I didn't, respect that. You know, like religious people as well. That's why you don't pay taxes as a religious person, or the church doesn't, even though that is harmful to society for churches to not pay taxes. Which, by the way, listen, religion, much more harmful to society just on the fact that they don't pay fucking taxes than being trans, right? But we do make concessions that do harm society sometimes. I mean, like literally, tax-free churches is a harm to society. So, but...
feelings don't contradict the important reality that words have meanings. So hopefully this answers Papagut's question as to why I spent so much time in my video trying to stress that words have meanings. Because once we understand that, we can't just change them arbitrarily to accommodate anybody's hurt feelings. And this is also why he's confused about me appealing to the way people look in order to make it obvious why we understand words as having meanings. That was just an obvious example. If something is clearly, just from looking at it, not a thing, it makes no sense to call it that thing. However,
sure, but again, if we're being specific about trans people who are making a meaningful, successful effort to express themselves to society the way that they feel inside, this argument doesn't matter to that. But again, if he's saying that he's just doing general arguments to the general people, there are some people who don't feel the way that I do about that, which I obviously going to disagree with them. And so if he's just talking about them specifically, I just didn't think that was made explicitly enough. I don't think that... and maybe I wasn't paying enough attention, but I don't think he ever said like, hey, we're going to specifically talk about people who don't actually put any effort in to express themselves in society based on the way that they like and feel internally. But I don't think he was doing that. And to me, like if that might have just been a loss of clarification on his part.
It doesn't necessarily follow that therefore, if something does look like that thing, therefore it must actually be that thing. Now, I will give Papagut some credit here, in that he does actually correctly anticipate one of the arguments I made that I thought some people might find kind of confusing.
Based alert from Papagut? What the fuck? So are we making the argument that we changed Pluto from being classified as a planet because it no longer fit the classification of a planet? And now the argument is that since let's say trans women, for instance, require extra steps in the way that Pluto would require an extra step to be a planet, they were calling it an exceptional planet. You're saying that we shouldn't classify trans people as women or trans women as women because it's too different. I think that's the argument he's making.
So yeah, I think that is worth giving some kudos. He does understand the thrust of the argument I'm making. So what I'm saying here is that one of the reasons...
Smart guy, dude. Smart guy Papagut. Can't beat that, dude. Pretty base.
Why strict definitions matter is because if we become too inclusive with our definitions, then words will become less meaningful.
Maybe. Okay. Does it matter that words become less meaningful? I mean, it depends on the instance. I mean, but again, language does evolve, so...
Because the more inclusive we get with definitions, the more exceptions we have to make in order to clarify what we're actually talking about, and as such, the harder it becomes to describe and analyze the world. Like, to appeal to the other scientific example I gave, the word dinosaur did actually become less useful once we decided that birds would be included under the category of dinosaur.
No, I don't know if I agree with that, because here's my thing. I think that we should include birds under the category of dinosaur. I'm going to explain to you why. This is a fucking solid argument. Okay? Are you ready? Are you ready for this? Billions of years ago, however long ago dinosaurs existed, they used to eat us. And by the way, I'm now stating it as a fact that some kind of human existed during dinosaur times, okay? I don't know if it's true. They used to eat us. And so when all these fucking vegans are like, oh my god, you're eating chickens, it's so horrible the animal. Yeah, fuck chickens, dude. Not literally. Not literally. Maybe. But don't fuck chickens. They're dinosaurs. They used to eat us. I don't give a fuck. Chickens and turkeys are free game. Eat the fuck out of them. Abuse animals, but only chickens and turkeys because they used to eat ducks. No, I like ducks. I don't think ducks are not dinosaurs. I don't know if they are, but they're not because they're cute. Eat chickens, eat turkeys. They used to eat us. They used to fuck us up, dude. They used to eat the shit out of us. Okay? Literally. They would eat us whole. They would eat our shit. Isn't that disgusting? So now, a couple quadrillion years passed. I don't know how long passed. A lot of time passed, and now we're at the top of the food chain, bitch. So now we're going to fuck you up. Now we're going to fuck you up, dude. So we're going to eat you. Okay? Ostriches, too. You've ever seen, like, an ostrich? That's insane.
Because now, if you're a stickler for accuracy like me, you will never say that dinosaurs went extinct 65 million years ago. You will say non-avian dinosaurs went extinct. Because we typically talk about non-avian dinosaurs and birds in very different contexts, we'll often be talking about one and not the other. But because the term dinosaur now includes both groups, it means we will quite frequently have to add in a whole extra 4 syllables to clarify we're talking about non-avian dinosaurs.
Sure, I just don't think it's a big deal. Like, right, like if your argument is like, hey, this is kind of annoying. Fair enough, but I personally don't think. Who gives a fuck? I don't give a fuck. This doesn't. I know I say I don't care, but this doesn't seem like a huge like oh man, it's frustrating. I have to be more specific when I'm talking about dinosaurs versus chickens now, or when I'm talking about the fucking T-Rex versus a chicken now. But it doesn't seem like society has crumbled in any meaningful capacity because we have shifted the language of what a particular word means to encompass another thing. I don't think it matters that much. It's just something that you're going to have to change your language around, unless your argument's going to be like, hey, this is dinosaurs we're talking about, which is generally not something that we ever converse about unless you think they're fucking cool, which I used to think dinosaurs were fucking cool, but I've never thought a chicken was cool. But when it comes to gender and sex and all these and men and women, obviously you're going to have more conversations about people in society than you're going to have about dinosaurs in society, which probably is true, although I don't usually have conversations about somebody's gender identity. If somebody's like, I'm a trans woman, I'm just like, okay, I'm going to call you a girl. I'm not going to talk about it, though. I'm not going to like sit in public and be like, let's talk about your identity. That's weird to me to have like, I fucking hate people like that. Like trans people are chill. I don't think I've ever had a conversation with a trans person, like in a casual setting, like when we're just hanging out and eating dinner or having snacks, where I'm like, let's talk about your in-depth trans ideology. Like I would rather, let's just talk about fucking Zelda, which the last trans person I was hanging out with, we talked about video games. You'd be surprised how many trans women like a lot of boy stuff. I'm being silly, but they did. But that's a whole conversation about being socialized as a guy growing up and then transitioning later in life, and so like that's a whole different conversation. But okay, I mean, fair enough. I don't think it's super impactful if we can have justifiable changes in language. It sounds like there is a close, and I don't know a lot about dinosaurs. This guy probably talks about dinosaurs more than I do. I just like the Triceratops a lot. Okay, that's my favorite. It's one of my favorites. It is my favorite. It's also my favorite. Power Ranger was the Blue Ranger, and he's gay, and he got bullied a lot. Isn't that so sad? But there's probably a justifier for why they did it, even if this guy doesn't agree because he thinks it overcomplicates the conversation. That's fine, but there's probably a justification for why they did it. It probably makes sense, and it's just a shift in language. I guess they descended from dinosaurs in some capacity. I guess that's why they now are contained in the language. They have to say non-avian dinosaur. Okay, gotcha.
As opposed to birds. So that's an example of how when words change meanings, it does get slightly more difficult to communicate clearly and accurately.
Well, at first, sure, but then as you learn, it does not become difficult.
And in the case of Pluto, the point was that because it's not like the 8 planets in the solar system, but it is a lot like the other dwarf planets, it wouldn't really make sense to treat it as one of 9 planets. Because then we'd constantly be having to make...
Wait, you don't like short people?
exceptions every time we spoke about...
Not a big Peter Dinklage fan, are you, huh?
...the 9 planets, in order to make it clear that this actually isn't true of Pluto, which is different. So yeah, that's my point, and Papaga accurately predicted where I was going with this, so well done him. As annoying...
What can I say, dude? I'm just fucking based as hell.
As it is to keep having to specify non-avian dinosaurs, and as annoying as it would be to keep having to say the planet apart from Pluto, it would be so much more annoying and confusing to have to, whenever talking about the history of women's experience, of their oppression, of their liberation, to constantly have to clarify that you are not talking about the women who are in fact biological males that identify as women. Now,
okay. That's actually an interesting point. I think I disagree at some aspect of it, because here's what I'm getting out of this. This is the conversation is, hey, we took a woman's history class, and we're talking about women. Margaret Thatcher is a woman. I don't know what the fuck she did. It would be frustrating from his perspective to constantly be like, the cisgendered woman, Margaret Thatcher. Okay, that would be frustrating. The way that I interpret this is usually... you're not going to identify somebody's cisness or transness or whatever unless it's culturally relevant. So based on our current society, you wouldn't clarify that they were cisgendered really ever, because that's kind of a given. That's the general status quo. But you would clarify if they were a trans woman, because it would be relevant, and then you'd want to have the conversation about some form of intersectionality. Maybe it would just make sense to do that. I don't think, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think 10 or 15 years down the line, we'd get to a point where we would have to make sure that we clarified cisgendered and transgendered women in the classroom setting. Although maybe that would happen. That could possibly happen. I could see that as being annoying. Logically, I don't think it matters that much. Emotionally, that would be kind of fucking annoying to me. because it just seems like an unnecessary clarification. If that's his argument, that like 10, 15, 20 years down the line, language would be just too fucking annoying. There would have to be these constant clarifications. Like, okay, I mean, parts of that argument are seen when people say like birthing people, which I think is valid language for the way that you would write it into insurance purposes. They would have to be specific in clarification because they're like basically it's almost like a form of it's a contract. So it makes sense for doctors and hospitals to say birthing people, or specifically insurance companies to insure birthing people, because like if a trans dude wants to have a baby, like whatever, as long as it's done safely, I don't care. I think that's perfectly fine. But like everyday speech doesn't have to reflect that unless somebody is trans, if that makes sense. Then you'd want to be like, you're just like, oh yeah, a woman's giving birth. But then like in some instances, the nurse would want to respect that person's identity or whatever. I guess I could see it happening. I'm not really that worried about that right now. But okay, maybe. I just don't think it's like a huge thing to be like, hey, that's a trans woman whenever it's necessary or relevant. Because again, most of the time it's not going to be relevant to make that distinction in like everyday life. Like if you've met a trans person, you've talked to them and you've like hung out with them, I don't think that you're like, I think that some people, and I don't know this guy, maybe he has like a lot of trans friends, I don't know. I think that there's a lot of people who like don't hang out with the certain people that they talk about, because maybe they're like not part of their circle, or they're allowed in movie theaters or something. And sorry. And so there's like a lack of a human element to the person, right? Because there's some things that in society, like whether we want to admit it or not, that you can't teach somebody something through words all the time. Like sometimes you have to experience it. And my mother is very conservative. She's a Trump supporter, but she's very validating of gay and trans people. Because like I have a cousin that's gay, and that's her godson. And I don't know if my mother would be gay affirming if there wasn't a gay person in her life that she loves, right? I could be wrong. But I think that for a lot of people, most people do better with human experiences over trying to explain through biases, if that makes sense. That's probably why I validate trans people, because I used to jack off to trans people all the time. I still do, but a little bit less than all the time.
The thing is, despite Papagal anticipating the argument I was making, he doesn't actually respond to it. All he does is acknowledge what the argument is and then move on.
I think that's the argument he's making. He seems to be setting the stage for multiple different claims, and then he's going to, I imagine, try to justify those different claims in a collective.
So he doesn't respond until a while later when I start giving some specific examples.
I mean, that does make sense. It makes sense that I would wait for you to give a specific... I mean, that just seems like the right time to respond, okay? Don't give me too much shit. They make it seem like I didn't talk about it.
For example, I point out that much of women's history has been defined by the economic roles they were doing, which were largely determined by the limitations and capabilities of their biological sex. Has been in economic roles extending from biology.
Sure. But then as time goes on, we're seeing that like those economic roles are becoming less necessary, right? Yeah, because of technology, and like our technology opens them up more. The same way where like technology allows trans people to express themselves more accurately and effectively. So I think that was the point I was making here. As time goes on, there's less and less of a difference between men and women, specifically in what they're able to do, because we have technology that's able to kind of shore up the gap in those things, right? Our worldview has shifted more towards like people that are able to do a thing should have the opportunity to do a thing. We've shifted drastically in that sense, right? And like now it's not necessarily about men or women. Like generally, men and women are going to be better at certain things, but like at the end of the day, we don't really operate based on that anymore. We operate like, hey, can you perform a task?
Now that is true, but the thing is, history matters. If we want to understand the current reality of a group, we have to understand the history of where they came from. The obvious analogy here would be to race, because that's always a great analogy. You cannot understand what it means to be black in America without understanding what that meant 100 and indeed even 200 years ago.
True. And I think that that's something to talk about because it can have an impact today. But I don't think that that is true, because there's still like an oppression to an extent associated with being black in some capacity. I would say mostly like lingering negative impacts of systemic racism because of lack of access to money. But as we get rid of those things, blackness no longer means anything. I think that's fundamentally what I'm saying. It's like as we kind of get rid of some of these things, these oppressions associated with certain things, or it doesn't matter anymore, if that makes sense. I don't think I understand what I'm saying. Holy fuck. I just think what I'm saying is confusing. I don't think nobody would ever listen to that and go like, oh, that makes perfect sense. Maybe a little bit. I'm trying to figure out a way to better express that. I don't know if I'm being like super accurate. Sorry, word hard. I understand what he's saying. That the history is important to somebody's identity, but I do think as time goes on, if we're able to shore up those problems in our society, it will no longer be as meaningful, right? And also with the access of different technologies, it would become less meaningful because you'd be able to express yourself more accurately and effectively.
Now, that doesn't mean we have to make policies and act differently based on this history. If that's your attitude, that's fine. If you just want to...
Well, we did. We made like affirmative action and DEI policies. So.
Talk about right now, when it comes to making policies for right now, I can understand that. I don't know if I'd entirely agree. I think arguments could be made against that, but it would be an interesting argument because both sides would have valid points. But if someone was to say that we don't need to talk about history at all when discussing certain groups and identifying members of those groups, well, then I think we've got a bit of a problem. I've made an analogy relevant to this before in a very old video that I'm probably going to remake at some point because that current video is very old and needs some revamping. But basically the analogy is to imagine that you go to a slave plantation in the deep south where one of the appeals, the unique selling points of this plantation is that the owners of it were black. And then you get there and it turns out actually the owners weren't black, they were white. Well, regardless of how much we can rethink the black experience in light of recent developments, it would obviously be wildly inappropriate to retroactively redefine what it means to be black such that we are fundamentally changing the racial dynamics of the slave trade.
I'm a little confused. Maybe I'm just not understanding. What does the race of the owner have to matter? I mean, I would assume it's still an outlier. Let's say like one out of every 1,000 slave owners were black. Would that change the general experience, or? Okay, maybe I'm just not understanding what he's saying.
And that's my point. It would likewise be wildly inappropriate to redefine woman in a way that would retroactively change the sex-based and gender dynamics of women's oppression historically.
Sure, but we don't have to have historical conversations every time we talk about trans people, right? Because in a historical conversation, the difference between a trans woman and a cis woman are going to matter too. Because like back then, people weren't even necessarily able to express themselves as trans based on societal standards and lack of technology that's able to allow people to express themselves more productively. So saying like, hey, in a historical context, this matters always. And I think that we can make general clarifications. I think generally when you speak about women from the past, you know that you're talking about cis women. I don't think that this necessarily matters when it comes to... I don't care. No, I don't think this necessarily matters when it comes to your general day-to-day interaction with a trans person at work. I don't think it erases the history. Even if we can't say that women are oppressed in the exact same way today, that was still an oppression of women, uniquely so, when it happened. Sure.
And that was based on biological sex. Yes, we could have the term woman include those biological females who have been significantly defined by their biological sex-based experience and...
This is just a conversation about intersectionality, no?
Biological males who feel like women. But before you're going to argue that's something we should do...
I mean, this is just an intersectional conversation. Because you can generally apply the same thing, difference between like black and white men. Like if we talk about a history of like male oppression, because like there is a history of male oppression, forced to be in the military and like high expectations to succeed and all this other stuff. Not being able to goon to Rule 34 femboy. When you're talking about men, like there is a different experience for black men versus white men, 50 years ago, obviously. When you're talking about men, you can generally talk about all of them, but there's going to be a unique difference in experience. It's intersectionality. So isn't that the same thing that we're saying when we're talking about the difference between cisgendered and transgendered women? Is like, yeah, you can still blanket them as women, but they're going to have a different experience, and we have to be specific in our clarification. And generally, when we're talking about the experience of men historically, at least in America, we're talking about white men, even though black men exist. But then when we're talking about black men, or we're talking about, like, let's say Chinese men, like, forced to do railroads, work on the railroad, which might be why they have trouble with ours. I don't know. I'm kidding. Sorry. You would be specific as Chinese men. So it's like, yeah, we're talking about men. And then maybe you'd even be specific about white men. Like, hey, we're talking about white men. Like, hey, back in the day, it was really tough for men, specifically white men, because they were engaging in the economy. But now we're going to talk about the struggles of black men who had a different role, and then a Chinese men. So we do always have these conversations. We've always had to make clarification. History is very important, and it's like nuanced. Your argument is like, hey, we have to apply the same logic that we apply to different races and sexes, and now we have to also keep in mind like gender, like transgender people in general. Sure. I think that we're in kind of a new age where trans people are finally able to express themselves more, I would say accurately. You would say not, but I would say more accurately now. All right?
You would have to present a compelling positive argument for why that makes sense. All we really get from...
Yeah, do you typically say non-Indian Asians ever? No, not usually. I didn't even know for a while that Indians were Asian. That's crazy. You know what I mean? Because I'm fucking white American, dude. I don't give a fuck about anything outside of America.
Papagut is what we just saw there, the argument that women's lives are less determined by biological sex now because labour isn't as manual as it once was. True. But if we still need to talk about that in terms of understanding women's experience in the world, which does need to be defined in light of history, we would still need to recognise that woman is a biological sex category.
Yeah, historically, sure. But I think that we could do that by using one extra word sometimes. Cis women? You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you know, we have to make the clarification that they are cis women. Yeah, we also have to make the clarification that they're white women or black women or Chinese women or, you know, any type of woman, because based on the time period, there's going to be different associations with multiple categories of a person, right? That's intersectionality. Right, like you're not just a woman 50 years ago. You're a white woman 50 years ago that's ugly, or right, because ugly matters as well. You're an ugly white woman from fucking 60 years ago with a fat toe. These things are all going to matter to some degree, right? Like maybe you're an attractive black woman. You know, maybe you're an attractive black trans woman, or I don't know, whatever. You get my point. So like we're just including one new category that have used to not include.
We might say that women experience economic labor differently now since sex has become less relevant to a woman's typical day-to-day experience. However, that sentence, while seemingly perfectly analytically valid to most people, would in fact become completely meaningless if we say that woman is no longer defined by sex, because, well then, of course, sex has become less relevant to women's experiences, because sex has nothing to do with being a woman. What would otherwise be an observation about the change in the necessity of biological physicality and labor, instead is reduced to a mere tautology. And by the way, even Papagut uses language that makes more sense if man and woman are biological categories.
As time goes on, there's less and less of a difference between men and women, specifically in what they're able to do, because we have technology that's able to kind of shore up the gap in those things. Well, yeah, of course I do, because I'm speaking generally, and I'm not like fucking insane, right? So like when I'm talking about men and women, you know what I'm generally talking about. If I'm going to be talking about trans men or trans women, I'm going to say so, because that's not the general person. The overwhelming majority of people in the world, but specifically the United States in this instance, I guess, whatever, are cisgendered men and women. I don't feel the need to be like cis men, cis women, unless it's relevant to the conversation. So I don't need to specify trans men and trans women in this instance, because it's not really relevant to that specific argument that I'm making when we're talking about how the gaps between really sexes in this instance were shored up. Like I'm a normal person. I feel like that's how most people should interact with this. Like, you don't need to always make sure that you're including everybody in every single language, as long as you're not excluding in a disrespectful way. And I don't think that most normal trans people, not like online people, most online people are fucking psychotic. Normal trans people, I don't think are going to be like, well, you mean cis women? Like, I don't think they're going to act like that, because that's fucking annoying. And maybe they would. I wouldn't hang out with that person, because again, I don't like people who centralize their identity around one thing. I like trans people. I don't like somebody who is so like all they do is talk about transness. It doesn't even matter if they're cisgendered or not. That's fucking annoying as shit. I can understand it if you're a trans person, talk about trans shit more often. But if we're in like a normal day-to-day setting, I don't want to have the conversation every day about fucking politics all the time. Like it's not stimulating to me all the time to just always talk about that. You know, I want to talk about biscuits and Disney. I don't know. I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, though. Right?
That statement there is assuming that technology...
Some people might think it's relevant when others don't. The way that I define relevance is if I think it's relevant, because I'm me. I don't know. Like, I don't always, it doesn't matter all the time. I don't care. No, it doesn't always have to matter. I think you understand, like we did the example from before. When you're talking about, like, women get pregnant, that's a fact. Right? But there are also men who get pregnant, trans men. But I don't ever feel the need to say that unless it's like exclusively relevant. You know, like I don't need to be inclusive to trans men getting pregnant unless I was writing up a contract, like an insurance contract, to have to exclude pregnant people. But on the day-to-day, I'm not going to be like, oh, this is for pregnant people. I don't really feel the need to do that. I'm not being disrespectful by excluding trans men in this instance. It's just such an outlier that you don't have to always bring it up in every single conversation. I guess it'd be better to use an example that was outside of trans and cis people. Like if I'm talking about hot dogs, I'm talking about a fucking regular hot dog. Okay? I don't feel the need to talk about a vegetarian hot dog unless I'm explicitly talking about vegetarian hot dogs. Right? So I'm going to be like, yeah, if I told my wife to go pick up hot dogs from the fucking store, do you think she's going to be like, do you think that she's going to go there and like come home with vegetarian hot dogs? No, because she doesn't need her other eye bruised. Right? So we're talking about, we're specifically, like, generally, like, you're not talking about outlier conversations in your day-to-day life, right? If you want to get turkey burgers from the store, you would say, pick me up turkey burgers. If you want a hamburger from the store, you're going to say, I want a hamburger from the store, You're not going to say, make sure you get me a beef patty. Generally speaking, we do this in every day-to-day like languages. We don't have to be inclusive to every outlier that exists, right?
Has reduced the gap between men and women physically, which only makes sense if the distinction between men and women is a physical one. I don't want to deny any group a connection to their past, and that's why I'm very resistant to redefining words in a way that would retroactively change what it meant to be a member of a certain group in the past.
I don't think that it really does that. I don't think that being inclusive to trans people is going to erase women's struggles from 50 years ago.
Unless there's a really good reason to do that. Now, for the most part, Papagut seems to prefer a material reality-based conception of trans identity, but he does briefly try to defend the more postmodern conception of it.
Even if you think it's wrong or crazy or whatever, you have to meet the argument. So the argument is like, oh yeah, I think I don't remember exactly what it is, but he wasn't meeting the argument correctly here. He was in my opinion, misidentifying the argument. And then I was like, well, even if you disagree, like you have to acknowledge what the argument is. There are people who legitimately think that they're men or women, that they were born in the wrong body. That's like their legitimate. Because his argument was like, what if Joe Biden tomorrow said, I'm a woman? Does that mean that Joe Biden's actually the first female president? And I was like, no, like that's not a reasonable argument because you can't just say you're a woman. That's not how it works. You would have to actively believe that you were a woman. And Joe Biden clearly doesn't express himself as a woman or any distress associated with being a man, so this would make absolutely no sense. And this is not a common argument to say you can be whatever you want. There are fucking 15-year-old idiots that say that. Most normal people are not saying that. Maybe some of the crazies online are, but like claim. And you're not meeting the argument. You're like, what if a dude pretended to be a girl right now? Well, that's never been the argument, right? So yeah.
I suspect this could be because my video is debunking so many other points of view, some of which he...
Okay, I mean, if that's what he meant, that's fair. He just never... I didn't feel like that was clarified enough. That he's like, hey, I'm specifically talking about crazy people that think all you have to do is say you're a man or a woman, and that's all you need. If that's the case, fair enough. I didn't see that clarification. I didn't feel like it was present there. So maybe both of our mistakes for the misconception.
Might not look.
Joanne Biden disagrees. True, dude. You got me on that one.
Believe he just tried to apply what I was saying to his own position, even though it wasn't really a response to his position. So again, the point is, I am meeting the argument. It's just not your argument. There are people who...
Okay, I mean, I suppose that's fair if that's what you meant.
...who believe that a woman is just someone who identifies as a woman. And by the way...
I don't believe that.
But even if you accept Papagut's reframing of this as genuinely identifying as a woman...
Anybody who genuinely identifies as a woman.
Yeah.
Right? Different argument. It's not the same thing. Sure. You can't just say anybody who identifies as based because they could be faking it. So like then your question could be like, oh, well, how do I figure out if they're like legitimately identifying? I'm just gonna here. That's a great question, you know?
Yeah, that still has the circularity issue.
Well, not really. I think that I feel like I've answered that in that video, no?
The question is, what are they genuinely identifying as? In order to genuinely identify something, that thing must have a clear definition for you to be genuinely appealing to.
Does it not? I don't know. Like if you're genuinely identifying as a woman, what does that mean to you? I mean, it's a little complicated to say it exactly, but it's like you were going to genuinely try to express yourself as a woman based on that society's standard of what a woman is, because it's like kind of ever changing a little bit every day, right? Like a woman used to be somebody with long hair that wore a dress. They couldn't wear jeans. They had blah, blah, blah. Nowadays, the lines have shifted dramatically. And so now I think it means more like feminine features, I suppose. But again, those roles are changing. But there are still some role things. So you would be a little bit more passive, a little bit more submissive, unless you're my wife, of course. But again, like I don't know how to encompass the entirety of what American culture of what a woman is in like one conversation. I don't know how to express that other than like, hey, you just got to live here to know. I don't think that this is anything that we can go through like case by case and do a sliding scale of like, well, what color of hair and what this and what that. But I think you generally understand what that is. I think it's just difficult to express like what exactly is a woman. Even like, I mean, if your argument's just like, hey, biological, I mean, you got me. That is much simpler. That is much simpler. But like, there's an expression of what, like, take the vagina away, right? Imagine it was like your mom, but she had a penis, but she looked just like your mom. We'd have to have the conversation like, well, what is a woman? And she does this role, blah, 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 blah. Right. So yeah, I can see why it'd be more complicated, but
if that definition is just...
Yeah, women watch Love Island, men do not. That's actually what the answer is to that question.
Your appeal to it itself, that's circular. And Papagut seems to agree that you can't actually know what it is like to be someone else, because the only way they'd know how that feels is to know how other women feel and accurately identify that they feel that way too.
You never know how another woman feels. You never know how another person feels, sure. You never know how another person feels. This argument just like it doesn't make sense just from your day-to-day. You will never understand me and my complex experience and the way that I interpret the world at all. I can see green as blue. You have no fucking idea.
So when a biological male claims to identify as a woman, what they're really saying is, I feel like what I think it would feel like to feel like a woman.
Yeah, I agree with that. But that would be one of the struggles of a trans woman that feels like they were born in the wrong body, right? Like they'll never truly understand. And I'm not saying that to be dismissive or upsetting. I'm saying that would be one of like the unique struggles. Just like women don't understand what it's like to take a piss standing up by holding their penis, right? Because all women want to know what it's like to have a penis just for a day. And pretty much every woman I've ever talked to has said they want to smack people in the face with it. I don't really understand that, but that's the urge from every woman to want to pee standing up and smack people in the face with their penis. So, yeah. Unfortunately, you can't body swap with me because it's not big enough. So,
and that is not a robust foundation for changing the entire way that we use the English language. I mean, this whole circular definition thing is done to death. I think I already explained it in enough detail in my original debunking, so I'm not going to go over it here. But suffice it to say, adding the word genuinely doesn't actually solve any of the problems.
I mean, I think we could at least say like the person might genuinely feel that way, even if you disagree with what they're doing. Right, like there's a distinction between somebody who genuinely is or feels trans, you say, versus somebody who's just doing it for attention or something, right? So we understand there's a difference, even if you don't agree that that difference makes them a woman, right? But I think you understand what I'm saying.
The only way this could make sense is if when someone says they're identifying as a woman, they're referring to something external to the label of woman itself, rather to the physical thing that the label woman is identifying. And this is where we get to the central point of contention between myself and Papa Gut. This is ultimately what the video is really about. See, he thinks that it's perfectly legitimate to identify being a woman by stereotypes. And
sure, yeah.
you can see this
kind of, sure.
implicitly when he says that all of my arguments would fall apart if I was confronted by a biological male who looks like a woman. Well, the difference is quite simple. See,
hey, there's Danny DeVito and the black guy! Dude, big W for Papa Gut not being racist.
the expression of these...
I understand the point here, but then like if I showed you, wouldn't his argument be like, hey, this was just somebody's argument but not yours, Papa Gut? To a very passable trans woman on screen, all of a sudden you're, hey, this is the reality of this person, but this isn't the reality. Well, this argument does fall apart with that, but his argument is that this argument, Jesus Christ, applies to people who think you can just identify, not actually express. This person argument goes away.
And this is also where he emphasizes the importance of expression over identity. Do you think these statements are equally true for both these men?
No, but then there's like self-identity and then self-expression, right? So trans people typically express themselves to society in a certain way. Their dysphoria has to do with their internal identity parsed with the external reality of the world. Yeah, because if you didn't feel the need to change your expression to society, then I think it's fair enough to say that you don't actually feel a certain way inside of you, and that feeling's not genuine. If you're like, let's say you're born a woman, and you're like, I have an intense dysphoria associated with being a woman. That intense dysphoria would be with the way that your body expresses itself femininely, basically, to society. And so if you actually felt that way, you would want to be more masculine, and so you would take steps to do that.
Now, one issue with this is that if you're saying that looking like something is as good as being that thing...
Well, I'm not. I'm saying you also feeling that you are that thing, specifically in the case of like trans men and women, right?
Then the entire concept of looking like something becomes incoherent. It would no longer make sense to say a woman looks like a woman because that would be tautological. By definition, if she looks like a woman, she's a woman. It would no longer make sense to say a man looks like a woman because that would be oxymoronic. Yes, there might be a typical idea...
Are you talking about when like you're bullying your friend and you're like, hey, he looks like a girl? Is that what he's talking about? I mean, you can still say that because they look more feminine, is what you're saying. You're bullying them for... You're bullying your friend Anthony for looking like a girl. That's what you're doing.
Of what a woman would look like, that an actual woman might not look like, while a man might look more like that. But saying that that causes that man to become a woman, that's a very different discussion. I was looking at this black woman recently, the famous...
But it's not just like, hey, you look like something. It's like you have this internal idea. And to what degree do you look like it? Like, all jokes aside, you might bully your male friend for looking like a girl because you put lip gloss on, but you're just like bullying him because you're doing something associated with a woman, whereas like a trans woman, generally speaking, would be going through much more steps than just that. They would genuinely feel like a woman, and then they would be genuinely trying to express themselves as a woman to society. We're not just bullying that person for wearing lipstick or not lipstick, lip balm or whatever, you know what I mean? So I understand the fundamental part, but I feel like it's just sucked the nuance out of the whole conversation on that one.
This rapper...
If you talk about femboys, dude, that's base as fuck if you're talking about femboys.
Ruby Rose. And she is black, I think, otherwise she wouldn't be allowed to say the N-word.
Hey, stop it!
But the thing is she even a darker skin tone than me? The point is that there's...
Yes, she is. But okay.
Enough ambiguity around.
But then we get into the conversation of like blackness to an extent is like a social construct, right? Like he was talking about that, like the history of oppression associated with black people. If there was no history of oppression associated with black people wouldn't exist in the same way that we know it now. Because there's like an oppression associated with it, generally speaking. Again, I think that like it's a historical systemic oppression that's kept up by, you know, money, you know, or lack of it, generally speaking. But that's like a whole different conversation, right? But it's proof that like these different identity factors are influenced by our perception, I guess. What?
Around the appearance of certain broad demographics, that actually there's all sorts of different ways that somebody could look like a member of that group, regardless of whether they actually are one. And the problem is, the more specific you try to get...
No, guys, I've been told I have the N-word pass, so just to be clear, I'm not going to say it out of respect. But I am basically black, okay? So stop it.
With the idea that looking like a woman makes you one, the weirder it sounds.
So it's not just looking, right? Like somebody might say, hey, I'm religious. But if they're not expressing religious beliefs, then you're like, oh, that person is lying. Yeah. You might be like, hey, I'm a girl. But then if you're not really expressing to society that you're a girl, like, well, maybe you're probably lying. Like, what does it really mean to you? Like, what does it mean to you that you're... I appreciate this guy not criticizing my gameplay. Trans, if you don't actually, like, you know, make a conscious effort to necessarily dress it or express yourself a certain way based on the way that the reality, unless he complimented it, is. Because if you're like, oh, I'm a woman, but you make no effort to make any changes to your external, people aren't going to look at you and be like, oh, there's something valid going on. There's no proof or evidence of your identification, right?
I've actually considered before making a video relating trans identity to people identifying as religions they're clearly not members of, mostly again to reinforce this very important point that words do need to mean things. Like, it was going to be mostly based on this conversation I had ages ago with this girl who claimed to be a Catholic, but then later on she said that she believed in polyamorous free love and considered marriage to be slavery. And I was like, all right, that's fine.
That's a little crazy, but okay.
That's what you believe, but for the record, that's not being Catholic. At least certainly being open about it isn't. But the thing is, I don't think that video would work very well because being religious is very different from being a woman. Like, religions tend to have specific creeds that they can point to that empower you to say, hey, if you don't believe this, then you are not a member of this religion. Like, for example, a Christian might say, if you can't affirm John 3:16, if you can't say you on...
Well, there's like a counter argument to that from like religious people. And usually you see this argument when it comes to slavery. People will be like, well, you know, I've seen Ben Shapiro make this argument. I don't think it's a bad argument. You'll be like, well, the Bible justifies slavery. And Ben's like, well, God gives you know, his followers religious guidelines based on what he feels that society is ready to handle. That's why there's an Old Testament and there's a New Testament, which I think is an interesting argument. But that what that means is that based on that argument, which, you know, obviously God never said that, I don't think, so you couldn't say that it's 100% true. But based on that argument, and based on the fact that there's an Old and New Testament with some, you know, conflicting passages in it, you could make the argument, maybe let's say that it is true, but that means that like religion is like ever evolving, right? From like if you believe in like a God perspective, because our society is handling more and more every single day. But like, yeah, sure, I understand what he's saying, generally speaking. I mean, I kind of feel like a lot of religion centralized around what a society needed at the time, creating, and then like that religion was created around that society. I remember seeing a video on TikTok. It was really interesting. This person talking about how like larger societies, you can predict a society's religious or what their God looks like or gods look like based on that society. I think societies that were bigger in trade historically had more than one God. You know, societies with a lot of people needed their God to make a distinction between just and unjust behavior. Generally speaking, because there were so many people, you had to like rule through some form of a law, whereas like if you were just a small village of people, everybody knew each other, so like the thief would have been like, hey, that guy's a thief, he's an asshole. There's only like 30 people here though, but if there's like 500 people, they may not necessarily all know each other, or maybe 5,000, whatever. I just thought that was an interesting conversation. I don't know if it's relevant to this video, but...
honestly believe that, you're not a Christian. And a Muslim could say, hey, if you don't believe that there is one God but God and Muhammad is his prophet, you are definitionally not a Muslim. There's no creed of womanhood. There's no possible purity test for womanhood. It's just a scientific description of your biology. In fact,
my purity test is when I put my penis in that thing. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of people who are women. Let's just be fucking real. Hey, fuck!
It's kind of funny when trans activists will very much project.
I'm not a trans activist, bro. Okay, stop.
And they'll act like the rad femme obsession with femaleness, especially the significance of menstruation.
I'm assuming he's not talking about being.
Means they must belong to some sort of ritualistic blood cult. When in reality, it's just biological females are organized around facilitating the function of the large gamete in sexual reproduction, and part of how that manifests in.
Sorry, bro. Too many fucking words. That's gay. Just being silly.
Most mammals is that they will shed their uterine lining. Yes, you can add spiritualistic dimensions.
I would add spiritualistic to that because I'm not a fucking otter. You know, I don't know if otters have complex spiritual perspectives on things. I think all otter know is egg. So I'm not an otter, bro. But yeah, like it's obviously should compare ourselves to like other mammals because we're mammals and we're in that classification. But we're obviously capable of much more complex thought and like spiritual expression. I wonder what this guy's general perspective is on like religion. Is he atheist?
To that, whether metaphorical or metaphysical, but that's not what makes you a woman. Of some deeper reality that the categories of man and woman are defined by makeup, this is rather an objectionable instinct.
It's more than just makeup. It's using using things. It's more than makeup. My wife doesn't even wear makeup, dude. She does sometimes. I think she looks nice, but I like it when she gets the all natural look. Things in society to express yourself as more feminine. It's more than just like, hey, I like makeup.
See, trans activists are sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place, because obviously saying it is just about makeup would be incredibly reductive. But
well, yeah, it's not just about makeup. It's about like general expression.
Then saying it's something more complicated about how you interact with society in every facet of your being doesn't sound that much better. But
no, it's part of it too, man. That's one of the biggest struggles with trans people. This is a problem. I'm not a trans activist, but you have a lot of people online who have no fucking idea what they're talking about when it comes to trans people. Even activists. I'm not an activist, bro. I'm a normal dude. I'm not fucking gay. No, I'm not an activist, though. But, like, yes, that is one of the biggest struggles of trans people is how do they integrate in society in a way that they don't understand intuitively. Right. So one of the biggest struggles for any trans person, let's say a trans woman, is, hey, I was socialized as a boy until I was like 18 and now I'm a girl. How do I act? Because they want to act like a girl. Right. That's a big part of it. It's your expression. You know, maybe he's not talking about me, but he keeps saying trans activist after he puts me on the screen. So I'm thinking he thinks I think this or something. Like, I'm not conflicted with saying, like, yes, this is yes, expression fucking matters. That is what is that's pretty much all it is expression. Matching an expression of yourself to society in a way that society generally believes, like, women act like, you know? I'm not, like, afraid of, like, 15-year-olds on TikTok. I'm like, oh, that's not true. They're 15. I don't respect 15. I'm just be clear. I don't respect 15-year-olds. 15-year-olds that try to talk about gender ideology are just as stupid to me as 15-year-olds who tell me that a fucking 19-year-old and a 17-year-old kissing on the lips is fucking rape grooming. Okay? I don't respect children. I'm sorry. I really just don't respect children. So, like, most people on the internet are not this guy, but are like children on the internet yapping. So I'm not gonna I'm not the 15-year-old that that stayed indoors through the entirety of COVID and just like believes things because they want to seem smart. So, like, I don't think it's reductive. We're talking about the general expression. The expression, it's a word expression is one word, but there's a lot of different things that go into, like, what that expression means. For a lot of trans people, it could be, like, the way that, like, it could be their makeup. It could be their facial structure, their hair, what they dress as, how they walk, how they talk, the way they lean in when they go for a kiss. You know, there's a ton of different things. So, I have the intellectual capacity of a 15-year-old. Hell yeah, dude. That's what I'm saying, bro. I'm a fucking beast. I'm fucking based, dude. Thank you, brother. Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
Firstly, it's confusing and as such doesn't really function as a definition at all because no one really knows what you're talking about. And secondly, by saying that there's this elaborate process of how you truly, genuinely interact with the world as a woman, you are inviting a huge amount of purity testing.
Like what? Let's hear it. Like, yeah, sure. That's like that. But I feel like I am purity testing. Again, some person that was born a woman telling me that they're a boy, but they have big fat tits and they don't have any dysphoria associated with it. I'm purity testing you, boy. Okay? And you're actually a girl. Okay? You know what I mean? You can't just say a thing. We always purity test. You don't have to do full purity test, right? You could have a little bit, a little bit of estrogen in that water. Now, you can have a couple of minerals in that water as long as it doesn't go over a certain amount that would make me sick based on general consumption, right? Like, you could have a little bit of stevia or you know, fake sugar in your drink as long as it's not too much to give me cancer. I don't know what that threshold is or, you know, but that's what we're talking about. So there's always going to be a level of purity testing people. It's just a social conversation of like, to what degree do we purity test? And like, what are the nuances behind that, right? Like if you're this is my opinion. If you're a trans woman And let's say you're young, maybe you don't have a whole lot of access to money, but maybe but you're like, hey, you dress femininely, and you grow your hair out, and maybe you're not super passable, but you're genuinely trying, and it's like a process. I'm gonna still call you a woman because I respect that. I respect your identity. I respect that you genuinely feel that way. I can respect that. I appreciate that. Right, but that's like nuance because maybe somebody else that does nothing. Right, you're trying. Hey, A for effort, guys. P for effort, passability. Right? Even if you're not like super passable, but I know that you mean it, and I think that matters. Again, like I'm a little bit more of a spiritual dude. I got a couple of rocks. I got like turtles made out of gemstones and shit. Maybe that's just me. Maybe you're somebody that needs a little bit more literal arguments. Maybe the spiritualness doesn't speak to you, and then maybe what I'm saying you'll never appreciate. Maybe I'm not the person that can talk to you or somebody like this and like change their mind. That's totally possible. But that's where I come from, bro. The
thing is that usually simpler definitions are better. The problem is with trans identity, they don't want to provide a simple definition because that would end up sounding offensively reductive.
I guess I feel like normal trans people are not fucking like, but okay.
The solution there isn't to make
my woman, yeah, I am.
The definition more complicated. Rather, it should be to anchor the definition of woman in something that wouldn't be offensive to refer to, which is to say anchor it in biology rather than femininity. So this leads us to the big question. Is it offensive to identify women by stereotypes?
No, I think it's totally fine.
One of my central criticisms of trans ideology is that they say it's really offensive to misgender someone, but that would require that there exists.
I also don't think it's offensive to misgender somebody either. Unless it's intentional. Like if you accidentally misgender somebody, like that's, to me, it's like a matter of like, are you trying to be respectful or not? If you accidentally misgender somebody because they look like Lily Tino, I don't think that's rude. If they tell you that they're a woman and then you continue to misgender them, I would say that's more disrespectful. Obviously, although Lily Tino, it's a different conversation. If you don't want to use those pronouns and instead say, okay, what's your name? I think that's me personally. I think that if you see like a trans woman and you don't want to call them a girl and you say, what's your name then? And you call them by their name, I think that that's perfectly respectful. In fact, I think that that's a great compromise. You being the type of person who doesn't want to validate their pronouns. I know this is just me personally, but you will validate their name. So, if their name is, Harmony, why are you picking weird names? Say that their name is like fucking Harmony or something. And you're like, okay, I'll call you Harmony. I think that that's a good like alternative, like a good kind of middle ground. Like I will call you by your name. Maybe I'm not going to verify or validate your pronouns, but you're trying to be respectful. To me, I operate pretty heavily on respect. So I think if somebody's being respectful, I can generally appreciate that more than like anything else. I think people intentionally trying to be disrespectful, I think that that's pathetic, unless the person deserves it, right? So, but that depends on if they're a mean guy, Are they a Melanie without the L?
Just a moral weight to being a man or woman. If I call a woman a man and I'm supposedly offending her, as if being considered a man is some great insult for a woman.
Well, I don't think it is, but for them, they're going to have a lot of complex thought because they don't want to be seen as a man. But I understand what you're saying.
The argument is that actually what's best for achieving progress around our understandings of man and woman is if people recognize it's just a scientific description, and the worst case scenario if someone describes you incorrectly is that they're objectively wrong, not morally offensive. You are arguing that there is some moral significance to being a man as opposed to a woman, or vice versa, and that is sexist.
Didn't Marge and Homer get divorced? I don't know. Don't tell me. Don't spoil it. Okay. You're overthinking. That's not what that means. Sorry, I have to re-listen to it.
Versa. And that is sexist. That there is some moral significance to being a man as opposed to a woman, or vice versa. And that is sexist.
Okay. You're overthinking. That's not what that means. You can do whatever you want. Maybe I misunderstood what he was saying the first time. But it's more about or maybe there's more context here that explains it. But like I don't know if there's any moral weight of being a man or a woman fundamentally. But like if you're like a trans woman trying to express yourself as a woman and you call them a man, that would be you intentionally trying to be disrespectful. Almost always. Maybe not this guy. I think there's something to keep in mind. Is that like when somebody's confronted with a trans person, we'll say for instance, there are always going to be people, and maybe like this guy, that are trying to be respectful but just genuinely don't think that they're actually a woman, versus some people who are trying to actively like disrespect and trigger somebody, so to speak, because they get some kind of a gratification of it. Maybe that's what we're talking about. But if his what does his moral weight mean? Is he maybe he's just generally talking about how like, oh, you shouldn't be offended if I call you a man, because I'm not saying that that's bad. It's not bad to be a man.
respecting somebody's identity. It's not about putting moral weight into being a man or moral weight into being a woman. It's about like respecting somebody else's moral weight that they put into being a man and being into being a woman.
So this doesn't
that makes sense, yeah.
Doesn't actually function as a response because my criticism is of other people putting moral weight on the categories of man and woman. The point is that if you are doing that, you are feeding into this idea.
Well, I mean moral weight of like, hey, you're a trans woman. You're more. If somebody calls you a man, the moral weight there is that you're insulting them, right? I think that's what I meant there.
That there is some unique moral value to being a man and a unique moral value to being a woman. And
there is not objectively, but subjectively, I think that there is. I'm a man. Like, what it means to be a man to me is something that I hold pretty deeply. I don't think it's bad to not be a man. I don't think it's bad that if you're a biological male and you don't hold to the standard of being a man. But what it means to be a man to me is something that I centralize my spiritual value around. And what being a man is to me is treating my wife well and providing for my wife, not just financially, but emotionally and physically, and doing what needs to be done and being stoic at times, but having my moments of expression of my emotion, which is mostly to my wife. So that's what I think it is to be a man, but that's my personal philosophy, and I don't think that you have to adhere to that philosophy. But everybody has different moral weight. What it means to be a man to me, it's a spiritual thing, and like I believe in trying to do, the mind, body, spirit in general. Working on those three things in different ways. It might mean school, might mean religion, might mean the gym. Like we do go to the gym here. I know I'm fat, but and like spiritually, what it means to be a man, like it does have a moral weight. Especially if I identify other people who would identify as men spiritually, like people like red pillars that like will justify rape, like Andrew Tate. I would obviously, if you're going to hold to my standard of what it means to be a man, I'm going to look at you as less than, right? And I think one of the arguments I make, and I don't know if he's going to bring it up, he might, which was one of the big core arguments that I made, is that we've always been having a conversation about what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman from a philosophical aspect. And I asked this one very simple question. I said, if a man rapes a woman, is that a real man? Well, biologically they are. Okay, we're not talking about biologically. If a man rapes a woman, are they a real man? This guy might say yes. He seems to be a little bit more like a literal. That's fine. Most men would say you're not a real man if you rape a woman, or anybody for that matter, right? And so, like, I'm just saying that we've always thought, we always, a lot of us, at least that are like-minded to me, and I would say the traditional man, understands that we've always had conversations about what it means to be a real man and a real woman. And so if I can invalidate you being a man if you're a rapist because you're not a real man, spiritually, then like we could validate somebody being a real man if they're trans, right? So a lot of spiritual stuff here. Again, this might not identify with this guy. This guy seems to be a little more he seems to be more of like an educated, literal person. I'm a little bit spiritual, maybe not as educated. And I think that those are just two frames of perspective. But I think that there's plenty of people who are not trans affirming that would listen to what I have to say and be like, okay, maybe I kind of understand. Because not everybody who disavows trans people is like this guy. Sorry, there's a bug in here. But there are people that have a similar frame of thought to me, and they might listen to what I'm saying, go like, fucking bug, and might go like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me and my core value. And based on their fucking core value scheme, motherfucking bug, dude. This guy said the bug in here to attack me. Based on if I have a similar core value build up to another person, they, in my opinion, should believe what I'm saying. If you're somebody that's more spiritual and more religious, and you do place value in the spiritual or philosophical aspect of what it means to be a man, and you're more traditional in some ways, but you don't force others to do that, but you're more traditional in other ways, I think that if you have a similar frame of thought that I do, you should believe trans people are valid. That's my point. And I don't know if I could ever communicate with somebody like him, because it's not a fly, dude. Okay, shut up. It's not a trap. It's not poop. I don't know if I'd ever be able to change this guy's mind, because I don't think that we have the same frame of reference for our humanity. We'll say what it means to be a human is a little different, I guess. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, we have different anchor points for us in general. My anchor points are a little different than this guy's anchor points, and I don't know if I'd ever be able to communicate anything to him And I don't mean that like negatively, just in the same way he may not be ever be able to communicate to me because we have different anchor points. You know?
This is the perfect foundation for the idea that women should always be homemakers and men should be strong, stoic providers.
I don't think they always should.
And eventually,
but I think it's okay to believe that on a personal level, as long as you're not trying to force it onto everybody else.
Ends up saying this.
So, for a trans man, being called a woman wouldn't be morally offensive because women are bad. It's because to them, they are not a woman.
Yeah,
like if you call somebody a slug, that would be considered bad.
Right. Usually you're trying to feel a little twang on the slug,
right? We understand this.
So I get it. It's just an off-the-cuff example towards the end of a live stream, but it's still a funny example, right? We're not saying being...
You know, I gotta say something. I appreciate that, though. I know there are people in here that are like telling me that this guy's like crazy or whatever, but I can appreciate the fact that he's like, yeah, it's just kind of an off the cuff thing at the end of a live stream. He's just like talking. I really appreciate that because my video, and he's acknowledged this before, is not well thought out. Let's be real. I believe everything I'm saying, but I'm not being careful and as meaningful as sitting down and being like, okay, what should I exactly say to communicate this exact point? And I can appreciate that understanding. I mean, like, again, I don't think that this guy's malicious when we have disagreements. I think that he's, I think, what the fuck are you talking about, fart fetish? Shut the fuck up! I think, I don't think he's being uncharitable. I don't know what the fuck you guys are talking. Oh, because you think I smell like poop because there's a fucking fly in my room. Okay, I understand now. Okay.
Being called a woman is morally offensive. It's just like calling someone a slug. It seems to me like maybe...
Well, no, my point is that like there's always an intention behind a word. Right? So, like, if you're calling somebody, like, a woman because you think they're a woman... I actually just talked about this before. Like, if this guy calling a trans man a woman would be because he... And I'm being charitable, but he actually thinks that they're a woman. Whereas there's some people that are going to say that because they want to make that person feel like shit. And I don't think that this guy wants to make trans people feel like shit. But there are a lot of people who are saying that to make people feel like shit. That's the point that I'm making. And so, like, if I, you know, like, I call my wife Smelly all the time affectionately. I love my wife. I'm like, oh, it's my smell girl, right? That's like one of my nicknames for her. I'm not saying that offensively. I love my wife a lot, and I'm being, like, silly. But if you call somebody else smelly, you know, let's say you're on Twitter and you're calling Indian people smelly, you're probably a racist fucking piece of shit because your intention is to offend. That's the point that I'm making when I say that.
This guy doesn't have a great grasp on what could be considered offensive, which inclines me to take...
I don't think that that's true. I think you're misunderstanding what I'm saying.
Some of his opinions on that issue with a grain of salt.
Whoa. It's not... Hey, you better, because I'm a slug. And if you give me too much salt, I'm going to die.
It's sexist to identify that there are things that men and women tend to lean towards. Yeah, it's sexist to force those people to engage in those things.
That's 100%.
That's the sexist part. Saying that women tend to be more empathetic and is not sexist. Saying that if you're a woman that's not empathetic, that you're a piece of dog shit, that's sexist. You don't have to hold people.
I agree with
to
that.
it.
See, the issue here is that people aren't just observing that women tend to act a certain way. That is actually fine. The problem is these people are going on to argue that acting that way is what can make someone a woman. It's not really racist to observe that black people tend to like certain foods. Some people might be offended by that observation, but no, it's not racist. It would be racist, however, to say that a white person liking fried chicken makes them black. I mean, you could...
I guess, sure.
Say it in like a joking way, like if there's a white guy who likes loads of really stereotypical black food, you could say, hey, that guy's the blackest white guy I know. And honestly...
Well, that might just be like a funny little joke, though, right? Like, intentionality does matter.
Yeah, you could say that a man is the most womanly man.
I understand the point that he's making, is that if we rely too heavily on stereotypes, that's like a bad thing. But again, I don't... So, again... From a respect perspective, I don't think there's a single trans woman that exists that's trying to identify with the stereotypes, we'll say, of a woman that's trying to be disrespectful to women. They are just trying to express themselves in society and be a woman. That's where that comes from, right? And so, like, what is the intentionality there? Is that misguided? I don't necessarily think so. I think stereotypes exist for a reason. It depends on what the stereotype is. I think women are generally more empathetic. I think I could be wrong. I think maybe it has to do with like a level of biological makeup and different like hormones, right? If I think that like a certain group of people are more violent, and I don't bring up any historical context that might make a group dissatisfied with the government and more frustrated in their expression, that would be me potentially being a bigot in some capacity, right? So it's not just, it's like, what's the stereotype? Where does it come from? Are we being disrespectful when we express it? Are we trying to be careful? These are all relevant to the conversation. I don't think a trans woman who's looking at the way that women generally act, saying that I think that's me, I don't think that makes them disrespectful in the expression of this stereotype, right?
And you know, he is the man who acts the most like a typical woman from what we observe. But the thing is, trans activists aren't saying that. They're not joking. They are sincerely saying that they think it is a reasonable position to argue that adherence to female stereotypes is what makes someone a woman. And in some sense, that does almost circle back round to, yeah, you literally are forcing people to engage in the stereotypes, because you're saying, at least in the case of so-called trans women.
Yeah, but again, I don't think most people care about stereotypes in a negative way. Like, listen, I'm a 35-year-old married guy, and I live in a more conservative area. And like, generally speaking, everybody's a little different. We all kind of believe stereotypes, but not disrespectfully, and so do like our women. But it's not like a disrespectful thing. And if we see somebody that lives outside of those stereotypes, nobody's shitting on them for the virtue of their existence. And so when you talk about and to me, this video, and this is not an insult, but this video is very online to me. To me, it's like you're arguing with very online people about things. But I like live in the normal, like I lived in like the world where, at least my world, where I see people not have a negative interaction with stereotypes. Nobody's shitting their pants over stereotypes existing. Like, oh, what's this? Like, what's stereotype? Like, oh, women typically clean more. Like, yeah, my wife cleans the house more than I do. It's not like a negative stereotype. So I don't have like the negativity to stereotypes. So when you say stereotype, I feel like you're putting a negative tone on it, maybe? I don't. Like, it's just, it exists. Why I say it could be negative. If I said like, oh, women tend to be more emotional because they're fucking gay, that would be disrespectful. But if I'm like, oh, I think women are more emotional because they have a different interaction with their hormones, which I think is true. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I'm trying to be observing. You know, stereotypes exist, and they will exist for different reasons based on a tremendous amount of factors. You know, there's going to be biological, and there's going to be environmental, this, that. Again, as long as you're being respectful, I think that, like, obviously that's going to be different between somebody being disrespectful at the very least. Yeah, womanizer probably got true.
That in order for their identity to be considered valid, they need to prove their identity is valid by participating in the stereotypes.
Yeah, yes, I believe that, yeah.
You know, if trans people are going to argue that...
If not, they're just a they. You know what I'm saying?
Needing to get sterilized in order to have their identities accepted by the state is equivalent to eugenics.
We just went in a little bit of a different direction. Sorry, brother. I want to just listen to that.
To argue that needing to get their identity is valid by participating in the stereotypes. You know, if trans people are going to argue that needing to get sterilized in order to have their identities accepted by the state is equivalent to eugenics, then it would logically...
Yeah, no, I don't think that, though. I understand. Okay, I understand what he's saying. I don't think you have to go fully along with the transition, though. Right, so like that's a different conversation. I understand what he's saying. He's saying that's transact, or he's taking the extremist version of my argument, I think, into saying like, hey, and what he's saying that I'm saying, I'm assuming he's applying this to me, is that I'm saying that a trans woman has to get wiener surgery, right? They have to. I think if they push it inside, they have to get bottom surgery, because they have to express themselves in society. Blah 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 blah. I don't think that. I think that you should be making a meaningful effort to express yourself as a woman. I don't think that you necessarily have to do that to your penis, because that's it, right? I don't think that that's like the make or break for what makes you valid. You know, I think that if you're expressing yourself femininely, like to a large, even if it's only 80%, I think that that's enough for you to be called a woman. Because again, women in our society don't express themselves. I would argue that trans women, even femboys, and you know, these are two different categories. They express themselves more femininely than fucking cisgender women. Let's be fucking real. You know, women, cis women, they wear jeans and fart. You know what I mean? I don't think you have to go along with the whole entire, like, go through with the entirety of the process to be considered valid by me. You know, personally, I prefer a little authenticity. I'd rather not fuck a trans woman with a vagina. You know, I'd rather have the penis, because it's like I want something a little more natural. But I don't take that extremist position. I don't think you have to go all the way. I think that, you know what I mean? Just like I don't think that women have to fucking shave their armpits or whatever. That would be considered traditionally feminine. Make sure I don't care about that either, but okay.
They follow that needing to participate in feminine stereotypes in order to have your identity accepted by someone like Papa Gut is equivalent to enforcing stereotypes.
Yeah, I'm enforcing stereotypes. Like, again, if you're like a fucking trans, if you're like a AFAB person, you're saying you're a dude, but you make no effort to change anything, you're not a dude to me. If you're expressing yourself as something more androgynous, I guess the word is, then like you want to say you're they, them, that makes sense to me. Sure. Yeah. Sure.
And for actual women whose identity is based on being biologically female, it would probably be quite offensive to them, as women who have striven to define themselves in opposition to simplistic stereotypes, for somebody to then say that biological males can be as much women as they are, precisely because they embrace and willfully perform those stereotypes.
As much women as they are? I don't think I'm saying that.
And that's what makes them women. It would
maybe. I guess if a woman had that much... Okay, maybe. I don't know. I don't think it's invalidating to cisgendered women to include trans women as a woman. I mean, this isn't necessarily relevant. I don't think that women, identify with their womanness as much as men do with their manness, we'll say. But that's not really relevant to this because I'm sure there's some women are. But I don't think it's invalidating to say, like, oh, you express or you think you're a woman and you're doing your best to express that. Like, you're a woman. Like, I don't think that invalidates cis women. Frankly, I think most women that would say that are saying that because they're just trying to figure out another way to hate trans women. But I could be wrong. Maybe I'm just being not dishonest. Maybe I'm just being uncharitable there.
So it'd be probably quite offensive to a lot of women if one of your key metrics for determining who's a woman is this.
Here's how I like to ask, like, oh, man, is this going to be a joke about having sex with them? Well, no, whatever. If you're a straight guy, who would you rather fuck? This person or this person? That's fucking base. That's valid, dude. You're telling me this is a woman. This is a fucking dude. This is a fair assessment.
As offensive as that is...
That's not offensive at all, dude. That's a fucking basic-ass conversation. Would you rather fuck a trans woman as a guy or a fucking trans man as a guy? If you're a straight male, what is gayer to you? Fucking a trans dude or a trans girl? That's the whole conversation. That's not offensive, brother. Okay? That's a fact. All right? I don't know if it's a fact, but that's a good point. Give me that. All right. Hey, you're a straight guy. Would you rather have sex with this person or this person? This is a biological woman, but this is a dude. Okay? It doesn't matter how transphobic you are. If I put you in a room and I said you had to fuck this person or this person, and you're a straight guy, you're fucking this person unless you're a closeted homosexual like Matt Walsh. Then you're fucking Buck Angel and saying, well, technically, that is the woman, so I will fuck them. If your dick gets hard for this person as a man, you're fucking gay. That's the point. And that's a fact. Okay? Now, if you want to make an argument that you're still gay here, I don't think they have the penis. I disagree, but that's fine. But we're not having a conversation whether we think it's gay or not. We're having a conversation of how gay you think it is. This is a fucking dude. Okay? I'm taking a girl with a dick over a dude with a vagina every day of the week. Because that's less gay. I'm not gay, dude. All right? It's also, sucking a dick's not gay unless you do it femininely. Okay, guys? You have to just make sure you suck the dick like a real man. Masculinely. Okay? That's it. It's a reasonable argument. Only hot people are valid. Are you saying that you think the dude's hot? He is, and you're gay. I think it's a fair argument to make. It's just a very simple argument for some people where it's like, well, I don't think trans men are men or trans women are women. But if you look at those two and you don't think that, and you can't make the distinction, I'm putting you in an extreme scenario. Which one would you rather fuck? I think that my argument there by itself, it's not like the end all be all, but it's a decent argument by itself.
It's worth noting he's not even consistent on this point.
Are there differences between trans women and cisgender women? Of course. Who does it matter to? Doctors. And doctors if you're having sex with them in sports. And doctors when it comes to sports and if I'm going to fuck you. Those are the only times that it really matters. So yeah, my whole argument is that like it doesn't really matter if somebody's trans or cisgender in our society unless there are specific categories. Like if they're going to compete in sports, we need to have the conversation. When it comes to the doctor, they have to have the conversation because there's going to be different medical treatment. And if you're in a relationship with them, it also matters because you should be able to, you should be fully aware if that person is trans or not before you date them, because I think that's fair. Outside of that, on a day-to-day basis, when I walk around outside, it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman in general, because there's not going to be any difference in interaction with a man or a woman in society on like a personal level. Maybe I'll hold the door more for girls. I don't know. But that's like the point that I'm making there is that like these conversations, like whether somebody is or isn't trans is not relevant unless you hit one of those three categories where it starts to become societally relevant. That's a part of my argument.
So on the one hand, one of the things that proves that trans-identified males are women is that you would have sex with them as a straight man.
Come on, it's a joking point. And it's still a decent point.
But on the other hand, whether you would have sex with them as a straight man is one of the few areas where them being biologically male actually matters.
Yeah, because I think that you should be able to get full disclosure from your partner.
Look, I've actually already made an entire video on whether or not a straight man would ever actually have sex with a trans-identified male.
Well, I don't think all people are fully straight or gay, right? Like, I'm probably like 10% gay, right? I'm still a straight guy. But sucking a penis is a little gay, even if it's on a girl. But I'm still a straight dude. I'm a little gay, right? Whatever. Who gives a fuck? I think it's a little gay. You might not, but I do.
And then considered whether this would give us reason to say that such a trans-identified male must be considered a woman. It's quite an exhaustive look into the topic, so I will just link it up here and I will leave it at that. Check it out. I would recommend it.
Well, you didn't link it up there. What the fuck, dude?
It's kind of a entertaining sort of humorous video that actually at the same time functions as a pretty in-depth exploration.
Part of me does feel like this guy doesn't understand all my jokes. I'm not trying to be an asshole. I think that this guy is autistic, but not like, oh, that's bad. Okay, autistic people are fucking, they're great. But I think that I'm extraordinarily sarcastic, and then some of the joking points I'm making, he's missing a little bit. Other then again, I'm using humor as a vehicle to communicate some other points. So it's not like I'm lying in my point. But my point there again was that, like, oh, Blair White is more of a woman than Buck Angel. Like, you obviously think intuitively, most people, that trans women are more women than trans men. That's the point. Because again, you would rather, I guarantee you, most straight dudes, all straight dudes, every straight guy would rather have sex with Blair White than Buck Angel, which means you understand that one of them makes you gay, and you understand that one of them is more of a woman. So,
of the topic. I think taking things more broadly though, Papagut is arguing, well, in most contexts, it would make sense to understand somebody like Blair White as being a woman. It would feel normal and natural for someone to say of Blair White, oh yeah, her over there. And yeah, does it actually feel more accurate to point at someone who is clearly presenting in a very feminine way, who maybe looks pretty much indistinguishable from an actual woman, and say, oh, him over there? Probably not.
Hey, that's a big W to me. That's a W to me. I won the conversation, okay? I feel like that's a slight shift. Do you think that this guy has ever uttered the statement, yeah, a really passable trans woman, it makes sense to call them a girl? I doubt he's ever uttered that argument his entire fucking life. I take that as a W, because this isn't a conversation, we're doing conversational content, right? This is what I call it. It's not like a regular React where we're just sitting here going, wow, crazy. We're doing conversational React. I feel like that's a slight shift. I've moved him a 0.5% to him acknowledging that a trans woman that looks like a woman, it makes sense to call them a woman, even if he doesn't fully believe that. I feel like that's a shift. I feel like I won a little bit. Not one, but I feel like I've had an impact. That makes sense, dude. I've had an impact. And even if he's like, no, that's not true, I don't give a fuck, dude. I'm dumb as hell. I'm just gonna always not believe you, and I'm always gonna think I'm right, because I am a fucking man. And that's what it is to be a man. Shut the fuck up. He said that in the original video, dude. Shut the fuck up! I'm a man. I don't have to be correct. Okay? Shut the fuck up. Did he say that in the original video? If he said that in the original video, then I'm wrong. But I'm gonna assume that you're just a detractor that hates me. So I'm taking it as a big W. We're taking it as a big W, baby. Woo! Taking it as a dub.
Interestingly, this argument, which is actually Papa's core argument, is the one that he dismisses as having never actually heard of before.
What's my core argument?
The first argument that might be given is what I'd call the accuracy defense, basically arguing that the reason we should include biological males under the category of woman is because it allows us to be more accurate.
I have never heard this ever. Hold on. Wow. Maybe I'm just misunderstanding the way that he's presenting it. Maybe I'm just dumb.
His core argument is the one that he...
Hold on. Actually, give me a second. Okay. I pissed. So I can now listen to what he's saying, because maybe I just misunderstood what he was saying.
Dismisses as having never actually heard of before. The first argument that might be given is what I'd call the accuracy defense, basically arguing that the reason we should include biological males under the category of woman is because it allows us to be more accurate.
Oh yeah, I guess that is true. Right? Maybe I just misunderstood what he meant, because maybe this is me. I just feel like that's a weird expression. Yeah, that makes sense. It would be more accurate to say that trans women are women or trans men are men, right? Sure.
I have never heard this ever. I'm just being stupid here. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
So the accuracy
Yeah, I think I'm just being stupid. Yeah, my bad.
defense I was talking about
I think I just didn't understand what he was saying. I don't know.
would be that it makes sense to refer to Blair White as a woman because to most people that lines up with their intuitions.
Yeah, that's more accurate. Sure.
That's what I was talking about.
Sure.
And Papagut's response to my counter,
I think that I just might have misunderstood what he was saying.
that, well, it doesn't matter how things look on the surface because there's still a reality deep down, is that, well, that deep down reality doesn't actually matter in most cases. Now, the
I think in some cases, it depends.
first issue there is that the way we...
I mean, I don't think that penis or vagina necessarily matters to what a man or a woman is, you know? Like, I mean, I know this isn't exactly the same, but like, let's say, you know, a dude blew his dick off with a shotgun and he's still like, you'd be like, oh, that's still a dude. He's a dickless dude, right? Like, you know, that's oversimplifying it, but like, generally speaking, I don't think that genitalia is the explicit, specific definer of a man or a woman.
use language reverberates outwards. If you're going to say, well, I'm going to call this man a woman because he looks like a woman, you have now redefined woman. And
I guess. Well, it's not just they look like it though. They genuinely believe it. And again, I understand it's difficult. So
redefining woman changes what it means to be a woman for all women in society. The same as if we redefined a black. He says, well,
you're a fucking idiot, but that's funny. That's actually so funny. That's fucking funny. Earlier, I said a rapist isn't a man, so all rapists should go to a woman's prison. Okay, incredible. No, that's not what I mean. I'm just. That's so fucked up. That's terrible. No, obviously I don't think so. Okay. My point is that we'll have different we'll have different conversations about what it means. My only point that I was making is that we've always historically had philosophical conversations about what it means to be a man versus a woman. Right? So it does matter for people who are same-sex attracted. Yes. Holy fuck. Sorry. I'm going to get triggered. You're probably just joining the stream. It doesn't matter at all unless the three categories: sports, doctor, relationships. That's the point that I'm making, right? So if a guy blew his dick off, you'd still call him a guy, but a girl might not want to date him because they might want to blow his dick off, but he doesn't have a dick because he blew it off himself. Right? That's the point that I'm making.
well, the biological definition only really matters for scientists and doctors. And okay, let's say that's true. The issue is that people's
dating
understandings of science and medicine will falter if there is a massive disconnect in the way that language is being used. If we just kept calling Pluto a planet and not calling birds dinosaurs and saying that there are only 4 elements, earth, wind, air, and fire, and saying that biological males can be women, well then when scientists try to communicate to us the scientific reality using the language that only matters for them, we're not going to have any idea what they're talking about. I
suppose so, but then again, like mental health science is still a science, and that's just a different, complicated science in a different way, right? So, like, there are things that I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong about brains, but like there are things that we still don't understand when it comes to mental health science because it's a very new science, but we still take it into consideration. I think that makes sense. Like social sciences make sense, right?
say that unless there's a very good reason not to, we should try to bring the language that everyone uses as much in line with the language that scientists are using as possible.
I guess. I mean, I don't speak like a fucking gay loser scientist. No, I understand what he's saying, but I don't think that we have to explicitly use the same shit, right? Like my cousin's gay. I don't call him a homosexual, right? Like that's like more of a scientific explanation for it. You know, I don't think that it has to be that deep. I understand what he's saying. Generally speaking, you want to have like a level, what did you call it? Like the Overton window? I don't know. You want to have like a general, not one-to-one, but within proximity, sure. But I don't think that we're out of proximity if we say that trans women are women.
So, if biological sex matters to scientists, it matters to all of us. And then the final
but we're talking about not just biological, we're talking about gender science. Isn't there like, somebody said earlier, I don't know if it's true, are there brain differences with trans men and trans women? That could potentially wouldn't that be biological to an extent? I don't know specifically, very new argument, but I have heard people say it and I looked it up and there seems to be some evidence suggesting, which means that it's very early into it, although brain science was early too. But there is some evidence, and I imagine it's not even in all trans people, but there's some evidence that suggests that the brains of trans people might differ differently from their cisgender, equivalents. I don't know, what do we say there? So like maybe a trans woman has a little bit more of a feminine brain than a trans man, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to sit here and use it as like a hardline point, but that if there is a level of truth to that, if that is true, then that does give a biological argument there, right? Like a science argument there, does it not?
To consider is when Papagut dismisses me saying that the real solution here that would work best for everyone is to change the way that we as a society treat the categories of man and woman such that people feel less pressure to perform these traditional stereotypical gender roles.
I guess you could, but I feel like that's a pretty tough task.
Most people who affirm trans identity probably would.
Like, that's nice, but that's... Oh, shit, I wanted to hear him say it himself, not you say it, and then me respond to what you were saying
Does that make sense? Like, I would have rather you put that in the video because I don't know exactly what you're saying. Not like the actual. That's just not going to work the way that you want to. Maybe
That's
pretend to work. I don't know if you shouldn't necessarily care. It's like, yeah, instead of doing this, we should just do this. Why aren't people doing that? Because it's not as effective. That's yeah, like the entire. So so if what I'm hearing him say, sorry, is that we should shift the way that society interprets these different gender roles rather than try to be more inclusive of trans women, right? Or sex roles, whatever. But it's like, is it practical to do a complete shift like that? Probably not. It's probably easier for us to say like, hey, trans women do exist and let's include them than to say we should have a completely massively different and fundamental change on how we look at men and women. Am I understanding the argument? It does. I mean, maybe that would work, but that seems like much more of a radical thing to do or more difficult thing to do than just being like, hey, trans women are valid. Somebody said there's rodents apparently that function without the Y chromosome that acts like or function as males. Yeah, I guess you could, sure. Maybe there's an argument. I don't know. Okay, that's fine.
Cool.
Like, yeah, we need a new gender balance patch. We need a new fucking live update.
I'll test the PTR.
Affirming somebody's gender is much more effective right now than completely deconstructing the way that our society views, men and women.
Now, the thing is, I
mean, that's true.
Understand someone saying, well, right now we live in a gendered society, so there needs to be something to accommodate people who are affected by that. But the issue is when that very accommodation perpetuates the problem itself, which is definitely what's happening in the case of trans identity. Like,
what's the problem?
Trans identity accommodates people who have this obsessive idea that they should have been born a woman rather than a man.
Well, I wouldn't call it obsessive idea. I think that it is like an internal concept of themselves. Okay.
But it also pretty obviously reinforces that type of thinking. Certainly it's doing that when we actively teach children that they can be trans or non-binary. We have this idea.
I don't think that's happening in any mean. Again, this to me is very online. I don't think that we're teaching kids they can be trans or non-binary. I've seen instances online of this, but they're not. They're like, again, I think that a lot of these are that's not something happening in the real world. I'll let you know in like 5 years when I have kids, or when they're old enough to go to school. But I don't think that there's any actual widespread, meaningful conversation where we're telling kids, like literal children, that they can be whatever they want. But, maybe I'm wrong about that. I think that that's a fear. Frankly, I think that people are a little worked up and a little afraid of something that doesn't exist. It's like the boogeyman. Maybe we're telling people that they could do that. I don't think so. Maybe they're doing that online, and that like online is dripping into the real world. Maybe. I mean, you see a lot of young people identifying as non-binary, but frankly, I think most of them are going to grow out of that. Honestly, I think that there are valid trans people, but I think most people that are like, oh, I'm non-binary, I think that they're going to grow out of that once they get out of fucking high school. This is a very new thing that's happening, and so like maybe I'm just. When we were in fucking school, everybody said they were bisexual when I was in school, and now everybody's saying they're fucking non-binary, and I feel like they're going to get out of school and they're going to be like, oh, no, I'm not that anymore. It's not going to matter. But I could be wrong. But to me, it's just like, it's not really happening in this way, and anybody that's identifying that way, they're seeing it on TikTok, and they're going to grow out of that phase. Not all of them, because not all of them it's a phase, but I think most of them are just looking for some kind of attention or to seem unique in some capacity. I think that that's like always how young people are. So, but I don't think this is really happening. Maybe teaching them it's okay and to be respectful of that. I don't know.
Everywhere in mass media, and we have pride celebrations enforced on society through the power of the state. If you
enforced in society, that sounds fucking scary.
If you weren't doing all of that, I could accept trans identity as a temporary solution for those who currently have a very strong feeling of association with the opposite sex. Genuinely, okay. I could. I don't want to be totally unrelenting in dismissing those feelings.
Big W for Papa God.
That I could accept trans identity as a temporary solution for those who currently have a very strong feeling of association with the opposite sex. Genuinely,
another W for Papa God. Another W, owning the transphobes for Papa God. This person could, let's hear it again, guys.
Society through the power of the state. If you weren't doing all of that, I could accept trans identity as a temporary solution for those who currently have a very strong feeling of association with the opposite sex.
Another W for Papa God. August. Edit that deceptively and put it in the intro. Literally do that whole sentence, but take out where I'm explaining it. Just say, put that deceptive. That would be just be funny for the end of the intro or some point. You tell me where. I feel like that's, yeah, okay. Okay, so it sounds like what his argument is like maybe we should get to like this perfect society where sex doesn't matter. These differences don't matter. And that when we get there, okay, cool. I mean, that's fine. I feel like that's okay. I don't know if we'll ever get there. That's like a very, very, very left-leaning take, where people are, let's get rid of gender. Let's abolish it. I don't know if that's gonna happen. Okay, cool. But he'll respect trans people's identities until we get to a genderless society, I guess. Is that what he's saying? Or maybe I'm mishearing it, but...
Genuinely, I could. I don't want to be totally unrelenting in dismissing those feelings. It just bothers me when people...
I had to choose what my gender my 4-year-old identifies as on the recreational soccer form. Did you? That's crazy. I don't know if I believe what you're saying, but that's interesting if that's true.
People say that these feelings change the actual meaning of those words and then try to impose that new meaning on others in society. Ultimately, this guy's starting position of, well, isn't trans identity really like religion? Pretty much covers everything that needs to be said.
Why? Is this guy atheist?
If you don't believe in that religion, you shouldn't be forced to participate in it.
I guess so. Okay.
Anyway, everyone, that's the end.
I mean, I don't think it's religion in the way that he's suggesting I think it's like, but...
The video, so I will address the elephant in the room. This is going up, 3 days later than it should have? The reason for that is that I was on holiday, as you heard, and the thing is, I got back...
Ew, he's from fucking England. I was on holiday. That's not even close to his accent. Sorry about that.
And I think this is a pretty normal thing, but basically, when you are out of the habit of doing something, it's very difficult to get back into starting to do it. So I was like...
My issue with gooning.
Trying to work on this video, but I had like zero motivation to do it. I would like write one paragraph and I'd be like, oh, I think I should have a break and stuff. And yeah, basically it's as simple as when I am in the habit of making these videos, which I usually am.
Damn, this guy's saying he was boring reacting to my video. It's fucked up, dude.
Then in order for me to not to do that, that would require me to actively change towards not doing it. But when I've just been on holiday for 2 weeks, and also I had, so I wasn't like scrambling to work on the videos before then, I actually, for like a week before.
I'm going to double speed this because I want to hear it, but I don't think it's relevant to my video. So, but I want to...
Maybe like 2 weeks, wasn't really doing anything because I'd already got all the videos prepared in advance. And then I get back and I, even had another video planned when I was back. Basically, I've gone like a whole month without working on a video. So it was just really difficult to be like, oh, I'm going to do it, especially since I was like jet lag. So it wasn't like I was getting up with my like regular morning routine. I was like, oh, go attack the day, do some exercise, clean my teeth, have a shower, get dressed. No, I've basically been very sluggish, but that is something, from starting now, I cranked out the video, of course. I did the thing where when I was actually cranking out the video, I was like, this is easy. Like, it's one of those things where, once you actually get into the rhythm of being productive, you're like, why the hell did I just waste a whole week? Like, what's the word? Not prevaricating. Oh, procrastinating. Yeah, why did I waste all that time when I could have had this done ages ago? But yeah, whatever. I imagine a lot of you guys don't really care about the schedule too much, even though, I am very strict about it, so you might expect it. But yeah, I wasn't getting any comments from anyone like, hey, where's the video? Well, here it is. Anyway, but hopefully this is going up on Saturday. I'm recording it on Saturday.
That's funny. I might put this up on Saturday. It's Tuesday right now. I have a few other things that I want to get out first, but I liked this video. This is one of the, to be absolutely honest with you, this is one of my favorite videos I've done in a long time. I appreciate videos like this, because it's just so fucking, some of the shit we do is so fucking boring. Like, listen, I'm not even trying to shit on anybody, but like, obviously, this is work for me, and I love this as a job. I'm so fortunate. But like any other thing, there's some things that we talk about that I'm not as interested in. I still want to talk about them, but like, I'm not necessarily interested in it. And that's like some of the drama stuff. You could usually tell in my tone. I know that I haven't been super excitable or engaged lately. That just like is what it is. But just does work. But I'm still like want to talk about it. But like stuff like this is fun. Even if this video doesn't do very well, this is fun. It's like, oh, we're having an interesting conversation, which I think is stimulating. It's not like hateful. It's not toxic. It's not drama. We're just doing this is like conversational. I would have an actual conversation with this guy, but it's just conversational, and it's like reasonable disagreement. And I know that it's not toxic because I didn't hear about this video until today, which was a day after it was posted. Which means that there was not like this like meltdown, fuck you, like everybody's like, oh, Papa God, you're a fucking idiot. Like there's none of that. It's just like, it's really just two different opposing perspectives colliding in a reasonable way, I think. Which it's just so much more fun. I like stuff like this. So this has been probably the most enjoyable piece of content I've made in a couple weeks, probably. But yeah, I'm
imagining I'll be able to edit it reasonably quickly. There was also, by the way, a whole extra like bonus thing. I wasn't expecting this video to be that long when I first planned it out, so I was going to do a little bonus section. I don't know, make the bonus thing as kind of like a comment or something. I'm not sure.
It sounds like it was actually the most fun run you've ever done. Oh, I was only going to do 10 minutes, but it was 42 minutes. Sounds like I'm pretty interesting, bro.
Because you'll find what it was. Anyway, sorry, I guess I'll just wrap up now. So do let me know about the glasses. Like again, I'm imagining, so like I can tell. So here, this is when I just get so much glare, I can't even see anything. The anti-glare, so there is like an anti-glare coating that fixes that. Like I say, I need to get new prescription, or like update the prescription. Anyway, this isn't that bad. Like I can't really tell. I just feel like maybe it's not that good to be walking around with like out-of-date prescription because it could cause eye strain and stuff on a kind of subconscious level. So yeah, I need to get that updated. In a way, it would almost be more convenient if you guys wanted me to get different glasses, because then I could just get new frames with like basically I'd be
okay. Get a room to shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Sorry, dude. I'm so tired. I honestly like. this is like this is like almost my fucking problem. Is like I love talking about drama, but I fucking hate people who like drama. Like I like listening to it. It's funny. It's so interesting, and it's so unintelligent. And I like unintelligent shit because it's just like easy to process. But like the people are so toxic a lot. Not my audience. We're fucking awesome. And it's just like, it's like a bore when you get involved. But like stuff like this, it's like, we're having like, it's just stimulating, which I like stimulating conversation too, sometimes. And it's just like so normal. It's just like, we're just going to hash out some ideas and shit. It's just so fucking crazy. Yeah.
Be able to order them. Whereas obviously, if I want to update the frames in these glasses, update the lenses in these glasses, I actually have to bring them in. So, but either way, like
But I will say, just to clarify on one point that he made earlier, I want to make sure I hammer this one in a little bit. He was saying if I'm saying it is like a religion, which I'm really not. I'm saying that there are comparative aspects, but when he says it's like a religion, what I hear is I'm saying it is effectively in a religion. I'm just comparing it to a religion in some capacity, loosely. But he said, like, I am not forced to believe in those religions and participate. Yes, you are. They don't pay taxes. And when an entity doesn't pay taxes, that is having a negative impact on you because it requires you to pay more taxes proportionally to what you should have to because they're not shoring up the difference. I don't know if they tax churches in Middle Earth. I think he's in the UK somewhere. Fucking England, whatever. I don't really. But in America, they do. All right. So apparently, over there in the UK, they have a different tax. There's a different tax exemption that reduces their taxes. But either way, you are forced to participate, even if it doesn't feel as direct. I would say that it's probably worse for you that the church doesn't pay taxes or pays less taxes than it is to have to call a trans woman a woman, because that's actually like financially negative onto you.
You save me money or you save me effort. There's no like, I don't want anyone saying, oh, no, those glasses are fine. If you like these glasses, say you like them. If you think there's like better glasses, if you think like older glasses were better, let me know, because I want to look good. Maybe that's why you guys come here, not for my arguments. Are you kidding me? I don't style my hair.
Whoa, he's got jokes, dude. Fuck.
I wear my fancy black.
Why you guys are here too?
And definitely manage to have fantastic lighting that doesn't randomly cause the camera to get blurry, because you guys are here for the arguments. Anyway.
Here's for
By
the
the way,
gays.
so the other thing, Patreon, I do Patreon bonus videos. The last Patreon bonus video I did was absolutely terrible because I did it right in the midst of exactly what is happening, like the slump.
Aren't there trans charities? They're tax exempt too. Sure, I suppose so. Maybe. I think that there's probably a difference between charity in general versus actual organized, instituted churches that are like tax exempt. But I suppose there are charities as well. I mean, that's a fair counter, that there are charities in general that are tax exempt. Let's see some of the differences. Let's see. There are some distinct differences. Churches are automatically considered tax exempt under section blah, 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 blah. While they aren't required to file this status, many churches choose to do so. Okay. Charitable organizations generally must apply the IRS tax exempt status. This process involves review. Okay. Key differences. Automatic exemption. Churches are automatically exempt. Annual reporting. Churches generally aren't required to file annual report. Government oversight. Churches tend to have minimal government oversight compared to other charities. So it seems to be less strict onto it. There's higher standards for it. But hey, you know what? That's a decent reactive argument there. So you know what? You owned me, dude.
We're just talking about the lens.
You fucking owned me, dude.
This video being delayed. I forced out a bonus Patreon video. It wasn't very good at all. I wasn't very motivated to do it, and yeah, it wasn't great. And I'm sorry to my patrons for that. The good news is this video, or this clip you're about to see now.
Yeah, that's actually a good point too, though. Like with mega churches, like clearly there's not nearly as much oversight on churches as there is. There is not as much like regulation on churches as there are on like other charities. But you know what? I don't know how much money like the typical charity makes because it's a charity doesn't mean people don't make money. They just it's just a charity, but people still work for the charity.
Now it's from
I don't know if that's a strong argument anymore. I don't know if it's a strong argument.
a different Patreon video, so I'll show you that.
And view that as some kind of over-the-top extra level of treatment. Like, trans people are still more statistically likely to face discrimination in the workplace, in housing, in court, in policing, in public spaces.
But again, it's worth noting, so I believe the fun statistic is that once you account for race, a lot of the issues for like being trans go out the window. And yeah, I think maybe it is true that specifically white, I mean, it's kind of funny to me, like trans people are all about, or let's say your typical progressive trans activist is all about intersectional. You've got to be intersectional. But as soon as someone can point out that a white, middle-class, male, trans-identified person is going to have maybe some advantages, and certainly a lot more advantages than your typical trans person.
That part's true, yeah.
Suddenly, I feel like these people get like offended, because obviously what they want to do is talk about how oppressed, and you usually have these white, middle-class males talking about how oppressed trans people are, but the oppression...
I will say one thing, because I don't know, I think that he's referring to trans women as males, right? Which technically, because male is the biological, right? But I will say one thing, And when it comes to non-binary, some non-binary people, I think that there obviously are not valid non-binary people. I personally have noticed that there are more white non-binary people. And I do think that we live in a time where everybody wants to be a victim. Everybody wants to be a victim. And it's harder for white people because, like, generally speaking, may not be as much oppression associated with being white. And so that's why they're non-binary, or they have ADHD, or they're autistic now. And there are obviously valid trans people, valid autism, valid ADHD, but there are people who just say that they are, and they're like undiagnosed, and they do very little to actually express themselves, and then they make it their whole identity. And also MAGA, because that is the biggest victim complex ever. MAGA is just the MAGA fucking 40-year-old MAGA people who believe that that climate change is a conspiracy, the election was stolen from them. All of that is a victim complex, right? In the same way as, you know, everything else is. And I think everybody, if you look at it, is looking to be like, hey guys, I'm a victim. I'm not saying all conservatives. I think it's more of a conservative mentality to not lean into victim complexes, but MAGA is a victim complex. If you are a MAGA American, I'm not saying if you voted Trump, if you are a MAGA American, you have the biggest victim complex out of any group in America, and you're fucking pathetic. Just to be clear, if you voted conservative, that's different. You don't have a mental disorder. But if you're a MAGA, you're fucking, you're actually like an unhinged victim. Just to be clear,
they're talking about is the trans people who aren't white, who come from poorer backgrounds. So actually, they're not really appreciating the significance of intersectionality when they try to claim that oppression for themselves, even though based on all of the other things they have going for them, they probably have an advantage. If that looked good, then check it out. Get on Patreon, that's really appreciated. Just bear in mind, my most recent video is probably not going to be that appealing. Anyway,
I just realized I'm pretty sure that this picture is supposed to be like mocking trans people. That's kind of shitty. I thought it was just like kind of like a weird picture. That's kind of shitty. But now I see that there's a crown on it and like long hair. So that seems to be trying to be disrespectful. Outside of this, I like this guy's representation of the way he talks about stuff, but this seems like he's trying to disrespect trans people. Or maybe he's not. Maybe it's supposed to be a surfer dude with a crown, but the crown makes me think he's trying to take shots at trans people. But hey, maybe I'm wrong. It also does have... maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah, sorry, I probably kept you here longer than I needed to. And I haven't actually got lunch yet. I need to get lunch. I don't know if I'm going to get Zed's in time because it's Saturday and I actually have something I wanted to do this afternoon. All right, bye!
All right. Well, just to be clear, I don't think that affirming somebody's pronouns, men and women, is necessarily forcing them to participate in some like deep, meaningful capacity, right? Like, I don't think it's like super deep. Like, oh, you have to call a trans woman a woman. I don't know if that's like heavy participation, but okay, cool video.